All right, it is 7:02. I will call the Conservation Commission Inland Wetlands meeting to order. First order of business, seating alternates. Sue, would you please sit for Marjorie? Sorry, I'll talk closer. New application, approval of minutes of our December 16th meeting. Approval of minutes of our December 16th, 2025 meeting. Did anyone have any comments or corrections? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve. Second.
All in favor? Aye. New applications, we have none, so on to public hearings for application CC 2525. Opening, I believe we have the applicant, Brittany.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair. I just want to go over some logistical issues for tonight's meeting. So the application 25-25 of 75 Great Pond Road was in receipt at the October 21st meeting. It was determined significant and a public hearing was scheduled for December 16th. The third party reviewed and presented comments at the December 16th meeting. The applicant then responded to the comments on January 5th. Third party I should also mention we had an intervenor petition that was approved at the December 16th meeting and accepted. The third party provided comments to revised proposal on January 15th. The applicant responded to those comments on January 16th. All this information with the dates has been provided on the Dropbox and also on the website. So per state statute, once a public hearing is open, closed in 35 days, which is January 21st. The applicant can grant an extension for up to 65 days, which is March 27th. We received a number of public comments, all of which have been uploaded to the website and provided to the commissioners. That concludes my comments.
All right, and we are to hear from the applicant first.
The herpetologist. You will hear tonight from Dennis and then Tom and Matt with SLR, and the other folks are available for questions as needed. As you heard the summary a moment ago, and as we promised at the December hearing, our team moved swiftly in early January to provide responses and plan revisions addressing the comments of the third-party peer review, Barton and LaJudas, and the town engineer in their December memos. After we received the second B&L memo confirming that many of their comments had been resolved by our team, but seeking some additional details about a few things like the turtle barrier and stormwater basin labeling, our team then acted very quickly, and the next day, Friday, January 16th, so the end of last week, we submitted written responses and revised plans from SLR and Dennis Quinn. We believe now that we have addressed and satisfied all the comments by B&L. Of course, we hope to hear that from them, and all the comments by the town engineer within the scope of this application. But in addition to wetlands-related comments, B&L included a section in their memo on overall design review, and I want to address one of their remaining comments from the second memo up front. In its first memo, as you probably saw, B&L asked if our moving 4 buildings to the west side of the site was, quote, justified, and we felt that we responded to that question sufficiently within the limits of inland wetlands jurisdiction under Connecticut law. In their January 14th memo, B&L repeated the comment stating that we did not provide justification for the need for the 5-building cluster, asking why do you need them at all, and would it be, quote, better and advantageous not to have them. Respectfully, asking a property owner to justify why they need to build on an area of their property is not a question that lies within the jurisdiction of an inland wetlands agency under state law. But the proper question is, do your proposed regulated activities avoid adverse impacts to wetlands and watercourses? The answer on both counts is yes. More on that later. And of course, some people may view it as better, if you will, from a certain perspective, to build nothing. But that too is not the standard governing this application. For a wetlands agency to rule that we'd prefer you don't build anything or cut any trees on your property, of course, would run afoul of the constitutional protection of private property rights. Nevertheless, McLean has been open and transparent with the commission and has explained to you why we needed to move units to the west side of the site. The first reason is you denied our application, and we did everything we could to address your reasons for denying it and your specific suggestions to us when you denied it. In doing so, McLean made the difficult decision to reduce the number of units by 12 from 52 to 40, a roughly 25% reduction. That was a huge reduction from McLean's perspective. It had a major impact on the project's financials. McLean performed careful analysis in deciding how far it could tighten its belt to address the commission's and the public's concerns. And 40 units is the fewest number of units McLean can build and still have a viable project. McLean, I hope you'll recall, is a not-for-profit institution whose mission is caring for people, one that takes its environmental stewardship obligations seriously. McLean's also a longtime Simsbury resident that hopes to be here for a long time to come. That's why McLean is proposing this expansion in its housing offerings. It advances McLean's mission. There is a tremendous need for more housing, and because McLean needs to build it to survive and thrive long-term as a not-for-profit in a competitive industry and market. Now, state wetland statute charges you as an inland wetlands agency to consider the applicant's purpose for the proposed regulated activity and the social benefits derived from the activity. So for that reason, what McLean is trying to do to address a critical societal need for housing is relevant in your consideration of the application. The second reason why we needed to move units to the west is that at the same time that we were vetting plan revisions, Dennis Quinn was completing his study of the eastern box turtles on the property. Based on his findings, McLean decided to move units out of the central corridor of turtle habitat and farther away from the wetland that was of key concern to this commission, wetland number 8. McLean and its team studied every possible option for siting units to maintain the required minimum of 40 and preserve optimal turtle habitat. And that northwest area of the development site is the best available location to retain those 10 units. And Mr. Quinn wrote, and he will explain to you that that northwest corner of the area is not an area of significant turtle activity. It does not break up important turtle habitat. And McLean has done what Mr. Quinn wanted to preserve the important habitat areas. Again, the question that state law and your regulations ask is, what regulated activities are we proposing there, and do those regulated activities cause adverse impacts to wetlands? The development work that we propose in that northwest area is largely outside of wetlands and the upland review area, other than a very minor downstream activity in the upland review area to a tiny wetland. Our engineers with SLR have designed that activity to avoid harm to that wetland, and our wetland scientist, Matt Sanford, has confirmed that it does avoid any such harm, and no wetlands expert has disagreed with them. So that's my response. We want to make sure we had given you to that comment by Barton and LaJudas. With that, unless there are any questions for me, we'll continue with the presentation and go to Dennis Quinn. You have his.
Oh.
Yes. Should be. That's a slideshow.
Oh, slide. Oh.
I just put it on slideshow. How do I boost slideshow mode? It's hard to see.
Can you turn it into a slideshow? Oh. Okay. So you just go.
Good evening, Commission. My name is Dennis Quinn, herpetologist for the McLean Project. I've been a herpetologist here in Connecticut for over 20 years, working on various complex projects involving the amphibians and reptiles of Connecticut, their study, and ultimately their conservation throughout the state and the northeastern United States. This computer screen is very difficult to see, so I apologize. It's really hard to see. Do I do like a PowerPoint presentation? This is really. Oh, it's really terrible.
The arrows right here.
It's going to be interesting. Look at that. I can't do that, but maybe the audio guy could. All right. How's that? Can everyone hear me? Whoa. I was holding the mic like this. Too loud now.
16 inches away from your face.
Oh, boo. Is that better? I can't do both. It's one or the other, guys. What do you want me to do? How about this? Can everyone hear me? Okay, fantastic. Let me start over. My name is Dennis Quinn. I'm a herpetologist here in the state of Connecticut. I'm the owner of Quinn Ecological, which specializes in the amphibian and reptile research and conservation across Connecticut and portions of greater New England. I'm here today to discuss the eastern box turtle and the work that was completed as part of the McLean application in the study that we conducted out there during the 2025 field season. So to begin, I'd like to just go through a brief introduction to the eastern box turtle and its natural history. The eastern box turtle approaches their northeastern range limit in Connecticut, inhabiting primarily low-lying regions of the state below 500 feet in elevation. If you were to look at all of the 456 known box turtle locations that we have in the state of Connecticut, 76% of them occur below 500-foot elevation. This occurs primarily within the central Connecticut River Valley and along the coastal regions of the state of Connecticut. They are listed as special concern under the Connecticut Endangered Species Act and designated as very important in Connecticut's Wildlife Action Plan for species of greatest conservation need. And that action plan was just redone this current year, and well, not current anymore, in 2025, and I was part of that group that redid that action plan for the state of Connecticut. They are Connecticut's only fully terrestrial turtle species, which is pretty unusual. We usually think of turtles and think about turtles in rivers, streams, ponds, and lakes. That is not the case for this species. They spend the majority of their time or all of their time in forested habitats, early successional fields, and shrublands. So shrub-scrub habitats is what we refer to them as. Nesting occurs exclusively in the months of May and June. Typically around June 15th is when we start to see active nesting for this species. And they nest in sparsely vegetated sandy soils within open canopied habitats. Hibernation occurs exclusively in forested habitats for adults. And then for juveniles and hatchlings, they can hibernate in forested habitats, shrub, scrub, or early successional habitats. Their behavior is a little bit different than that of adult box turtles. Perfect. So the Meadow Homes box turtle study for 2025. This is just a brief summary of what we did and some of the results of what we found. Surveys commenced on April 19th and concluded on June 1st. When I say surveys, this is visually looking for box turtles. So just out there searching with your eyes throughout all the various habitats to find as many turtles as we possibly could. We did a total of 12 survey days. This consisted of 97 survey hours, but with multiple people, if you add that up, we had a total of 187 and a half man hours of survey effort for the box turtles on this property. We were able to encounter a total of 21 turtles during this effort, including 19 adults, a total of 14 of these adults, 7 females and 7 males. So we split that 50-50. Were fitted with radio transmitters, including 1 juvenile turtle. Radio transmitters enable us to track the turtles throughout their environments. One thing I should point out is that you'll notice there were 7 females in the population and 12 males in the population. This is a male-biased population, which would suggest females are being killed at a higher rate than males are within this system. And that's a direct result of females searching out nesting habitat and running into issues like lawnmowers, cars, things like that. Very common in box turtle populations or turtle populations in general. Radio tracking commenced on April 22nd and concluded on November 7th. We got a total of 337 radio tracking data points, including 313 locations for adults, 146 for the females on site, 167 for the males on site, and 24 locations for the juvenile turtle. One thing that is important to note is that we attempted an additional 41 tracking locations, but we were not able to obtain signal on these turtles. And the reason being is that they left the McLean property to a distance that is too far for our equipment to pick up where they would have been. That distance is variable, but usually a few hundred meters, depending on terrain and things like that. Approximately 21% of the turtles of the tracking locations fell outside of McLean property. I don't know if you guys can see that map, but that shows you where all the turtle points are. Habitat use. This is of interest, I'm sure, to everyone. Habitat use consisted of 69.52% forested habitat, 10.83% early successional, 2.56% wetlands. Again, this is not a aquatic species. 5.13% edge habitat, 1.99% on the golf course, and 9.97% residential outside of the McLean property. So you'll notice that this population had 69.52% forested habitat use. This is actually very high. This is a little bit higher than we would have anticipated. Reason being is that this site lacks shrub scrub habitat, which is their preferred habitat in the spring and late spring seasons. And instead of using those habitats because they're absent on site, they spent more time in the forest than they typically would have. Forested habitat was used to the greatest extent during all seasons. Late spring shifts from forested habitat to early successional habitats occurred. This was especially true for the females as they were seeking out areas to nest for egg deposition. The golf course was used during the late spring and early summer, and residential properties surrounding the property of McLean were used during all seasons. Wetland habitat use accounted for 2.56%. So of the 337 tracking points, only 9 of them occurred in wetland habitats. All of those occurred during late spring, late summer, or fall, and during their use. So when they were in those wetlands, the wetlands all lacked surface water during that time frame. A total of 3 of the 15 turtles that were tracked were observed in the wetlands habitat during this study period. So of the 15 tracked turtles, only 3 of them were in the wetlands at any given for the duration of the study. Oop, that didn't work. Nesting. We did a lot of nesting studies out here because nesting is a very important thing when it comes to box turtles. Nesting congregations and egg deposition occurred in a very small area of open sandy habitat in the southern lobe of the field. This is important to note. You typically do not get nesting congregations with turtles the way that they did on this property. Reason being is that although there's a beautiful open meadow field there, the field itself is not very suitable for nesting and egg deposition. It's too densely vegetated with herbaceous plants. Turtles do not like densely rooted plants because they're very difficult to dig in, and also roots will end up eating eggs, believe it or not. The roots will go into the eggs and they'll suck the nutrients out of the eggs. So it's not a good thing for the eggs. We did find nest predators because we set up a nesting box with well, this is not the actual camera, that's a decoy camera. The live feed camera was set up to show where potential nesting predators might be and what they were. We were able to detect quite a few predators, coyotes, fox, raccoons, and although we didn't detect skunk, it's got to be out there. That is one that is a primary predator on turtle eggs. So what are our conservation goals? For me, the goals are very simple. We have three basic stages to our conservation. The first is design modification. You have to design your development in a way that's going to be conducive to allow the turtles to move throughout the environment and use all the habitats that they definitely need throughout their natural history within a single season of activity. So we wanted to preserve the most frequently occupied habitat mosaics on the site. These fell within the core center of the site, and you'll see that on the map that I present next. Preserve the forested habitat where box turtles were documented hibernating. This is critical. When you're talking about turtle conservation, the most important thing for box turtles is where they're hibernating. Not where they're nesting. That's also important. That's what we consider to be number two. But number one is you don't want to disturb where they're nesting. That is a difficult thing for them to find and reestablish overwintering zones because that's when they're most susceptible to natural mortality. So when it comes to mortality, box turtles, don't really die once they reach adulthood. They live for 75 plus years. But if you end up moving their hibernacular around, that can make them more susceptible to things like desiccation and ultimately death. So you don't want to mess with hibernating areas. Preserve the early successional habitat in the southern lobe of the field. This is critical. And then install permanent barriers to prevent turtles from accessing development areas, both during the construction process and permanently once the construction is built. This will keep the turtles out of any potential hazards that they might face moving across the landscape and keep them sort of contained within the central area of the site. Now, I mentioned earlier that this site was lacking shrub-scrub habitat, a critical habitat for this species. So I put into place quite a bit of habitat creation and enhancements. Number one was create shrubland habitat. This is very important. So we're going to be creating shrubland habitat on site, which is currently absent, mixed early to late successional habitat, which is also currently absent on site, and nesting habitat, which is limited on site, and where it is on site is functioning very poorly. The nest that was caged during our study had complete egg failure due to root trespass into the nesting cavity, and then the roots going into the eggs and sucking out all of the nutrients. So though none of the turtle eggs hatched. In my 25 years of doing this, I've never had a nest have complete egg failure, and I've caged hundreds of eggs in my life. So I was actually very surprised that happened, but it happened. It does happen, I guess. Happened on this project. So we're going to be managing it in these successional states because that's what's critical. You can't just build something and then leave it because then it won't function after 5 to 10 years. We'll be managing the existing field habitat, the mixed early to late successional habitat areas, and the created nesting zones. What's also important, and I don't typically get involved in projects unless there's going to be a post-construction monitoring phase. A lot of consultants will, come up with these very, intricate protection plans and then they don't do anything to monitor them to see if they work. That's kind of a policy of mine. If I can't monitor what I've done to make sure that it's working, I don't want a part of it. So this is very important. Monitor the box turtle population post-construction to evaluate the success of the conservation initiatives. And if they don't work, we'll be back at the drawing board making modifications as necessary to ensure that they do work long-term for this population. So here's some of the design modifications. These have allowed us to preserve 29.8 acres of unfragmented core habitat. You can see that on the map here, all outlined in green. And this area here corresponds with the majority of the habitat use by the box turtles that were tracked. There is an additional 7.9 acres of what I would call non-core habitat. That's outlined in red. They may go into these areas. They didn't use them that much during the study, and I don't anticipate they're going to use them that much, once this project is built out. But ultimately, this represents 37.7 acres of unfragmented habitat for the turtles, which is a 10.3 acre increase in unfragmented habitats from the previous design plan. So what was achieved by this? Well, how was this achieved, really? It was achieved by reducing the number of residential structures, by relocating 8 residential structures and their access drive outside of the southern lobe of the field. So previously, there was a lot of development in this area. We located all of that development outside of this area, relocated it partially up into this area of the development. And what that has done is preserve the primary nesting area here, but also is going to allow us to do a lot of nice management down in this area. In addition, by shifting these 4 residential structures and their access drive out of the primary habitat area through here, we were able to preserve, where are we here? We were able to preserve the primary hibernacula sites. So most of the turtles hibernated right in this area. And the previous plan had cited many houses in this area. And again, you don't want to mess with forested habitat that box turtles are hibernating in. It's a very difficult thing for them to adjust to. All the residential structures on the eastern drive have been relocated to the eastern side of the roadway. So you could see here, everything has been located to the eastern side. This has reduced impacts to both the nesting areas, the field. It'll enable us to create late successional habitat here, protect the hibernacula, but also make this barrier that we have here much more functional. So turtles don't have the ability to get into backyards of this property once it's built out. 5 residential structures were relocated to the northern part of the field lobe where minimal activity was documented. And you could see that pretty clearly on this next map. If you look here, all of the turtle points you're seeing here, the majority of them fall down in this area. The hibernation points are in yellow. They're yellow squares. That's the forested area, which we had homes relocated out of this area into this area. And then down in here where they were nesting, there used to be homes down here, which were also relocated out of that area. Not many turtles were using this area. We documented a female in this area a single time, and I believe it was 3 males which used it like 7 times. Very few turtles were using this portion of the site. They concentrated in the central portion of the site here, and their movements trended to the south into the forest field edge and down into this area. So preserving this central area of the site is going to be absolutely critical in the long-term preservation of this population. And that's pretty clear from the previous design plan, how that would have impacted this redesigned plan and to protect these turtles. Yeah, there was an additional building here that was recently moved, and that was moved specifically because it fell right here where these turtle hibernacula locations are. And one of the things I didn't want to have happen is any additional impacts to this forested system, because that could also impact the ability for the turtles to hibernate in that zone. So keeping this zone largely intact and unfragmented, canopied, and then transitioning from canopied to late successional to early successional, that's really what these turtles are going to want. And that's what they're going to thrive on once this is actually built out and installed. Okay, so these design modifications have made more effectively preserve the most critical habitat mosaics and facilitate habitat creation and enhancements. What has this done? Well, it's reduced direct impacts to hibernacular locations from 8 turtles to 1. So the previous design would have impacted a total of 9 turtles. This one will only impact 1 of those turtles. So we've reduced it quite a bit. We reduced direct impacts on the nesting location by 100%. Although we will be creating additional nesting habitat, this location was going to be basically situated right under a house. So that home was now moved. So we've reduced that by 100%. Reduced direct impacts on observed turtle point locations from 146 to 64. So that was a change of 56.16%. And then we preserved the core early successional habitat in the southern lobe, where all the females nested. 30 of the 38 early successional habitat use points were recorded. This consisted of 10 turtles, 4 females 20 times, and 6 males 10 times, versus that upper lobe where we moved those 5 houses to, where we saw 8 habitat use points, a single female a single time, and 3 males a total of 7 times. So this was not used to a great extent by the turtle population as a whole. We maintain the ecological connectivity between the most used habitat mosaics within the center of the site, thereby reducing fragmentation of the box turtle's preferred habitat. And by maintaining the connectivity between the forested habitat where they're hibernating and this lower field, we'll be able to really do some nice habitat creation and habitat enhancements in the southern lobe of the field to kind of bring this core habitat together and make it much more friendly for the turtles in the sense of creating nice transitional areas and more nesting areas for them to utilize. If we look at the habitat creation in a little bit more detail, this is what I'm proposing. All that habitat in pink will account for a total of 1 acre of late successional shrubland that we're proposing to create. This will create a soft edge, so a transitional zone between the forested habitat and the early successional, incredibly important habitat for eastern box turtles. We will be creating 5 patches of mixed herbaceous shrub habitat. This will total 0.83 acres. The primary purpose of this habitat is to create transitional zones between shrubland habitats and early successional habitats, but more importantly, staging areas for nesting turtles. This is something that's often overlooked in management plans. People tend to create these beautiful nesting areas for turtles, but forget that turtles just don't like to sit in open fields and then look to where they're going to nest. They really target these transitional staging areas for not just protection from predators, but also for thermal regulation. Prior to egg deposition, thermal regulation and how they regulate their bodies thermally is pretty important to the development of the eggs internally. So without these staging areas for them to do that, you run into a lot of issues with created habitats because you don't take all of the necessities into consideration. And then we're also going to maintain 4 acres of the existing early successional habitat, and that will be done on a seasonal basis. Of course, there is a management plan for all of this. We're not just going to go in and mow this during the month of June. That would be completely counterproductive. All the activity for management will happen during the inactive season for the box turtles. We will ensure that the sandy nesting areas remain open and sandy for suitable egg deposition and development locations, and we will make sure that the early successional habitat is managed while still allowing the shrub-scrub habitat and transitional shrub-scrub habitat to develop over time. Eastern box turtle protection measures. This is also very important in these projects. We have a robust pre-construction plan. All turtles will be fitted with radio transmitters. So we'll, get about 25 transmitters for all the turtles on site. This will enable us to track these turtles anytime we need to or want to, so we will always know where they are on site, which will erase all the guessing games as to, are turtles getting into the construction area? Is there, something went wrong? We'll know exactly what's happening immediately. Prior to any clearing, grubbing, or construction activities, we will have temporary exclusionary barrier, which will serve the dual function of sediment control and as a barrier to the wildlife to prevent them from getting into construction areas. We will be conducting turtle sweeps within the developed areas and making sure all the turtles are relocated into that safety zone within the excluded fences. The fences will be monitored daily by the environmental inspector on the project. They will be monitored once a week by a herpetologist, and within 24 hours of any storm event of 0.5 inches of rain or greater, and following high wind events to make sure the fence remains intact and functioning as it's intended for its exclusionary purpose for the turtles. During construction, prior to the commencement of any work, key personnel will meet with the project herpetologist on site to review the species conservation goals. The herpetologist will provide educational materials and training describing how to identify eastern box turtles and what to do in the event one is encountered during construction activities. Lastly, continued monitoring of the box turtle population through radio telemetry will occur. And then post-construction, once everything is done, we are planning to conduct an additional 2 years of post-construction monitoring. The purpose of this is to evaluate the mitigation success and revise any potential shortcomings of the proposed mitigation plan. Matt Sanford will go through a little bit more in detail about some of the creation area stuff and the plants we'll be using and other methodologies like that. But if anyone does have any questions, I would be happy to answer them now or at a later time. And thank you very much for your time.
Where are they loaded? Oh. Good evening. For the record, Tom Daly with SLR Consulting. I'm a professional engineer licensed in the state of Connecticut. Picking up where Dennis left off, I'll walk you through some of the revisions in the plan. As Dennis indicated, one of the more important ones to bring to this commission's attention is the as Dennis indicated, when we came before you last time, we had a building that was tucked up into this area here. The building itself was outside the upland review area, but the clearing was. Working with Dennis, and Dennis gave you a really good explanation of the conversations that we've had as a design team. It was Dennis's recommendation to slide that building and put it right here. And that ultimately, as you can see, it really resulted in an unfragmented section of woods there. This building essentially is located in the meadow area and is not located within the upland review area. And what that resulted was about a half acre of tree clearing was eliminated. That's also part of this unit here, this building here. There's a north end of the meadow here and that's about a half acre of an area that we're calling as reforestation. So this will be heavily planted. If you look out there today, the meadow kind of does a little bit of a curve here and comes off here. We saw this as an opportunity to kind of reestablish this woodland corridor adjacent to the neighbors. So ultimately, that revision was incorporated into the plans, and I think Dennis gave you a really good explanation of why we did that. One other revision you can see here, we worked with Dennis. We initially were proposing McLean was proposing a mowed pathway through the meadow. Dennis raised concerns of the mowers operating through that meadow. We worked with McLean. We still have the trail connection that comes up through here, which is also a utility connection. People will have the ability to walk through the meadow as they have, but it won't be a mowed path. The other option was we could have turned it into a gravel path, and that was not really in keeping of what McLean was looking to do. So it'll be more of a free range walking in the meadow. It will not be a mowed path. So as I said here is, so just a simple, you can see, and sorry, this room lighting is a little tough, but in faint color is that building. So that was a 2-unit building. And you can see the clearing limit that was kind of dropping down towards the wetlands. And then by dropping this over to here, as you can see now, there is really no development that's occurring in this whole corridor going all the way down through here. Page up. So, this one? Okay, great, thank you. As the town staff indicated, one of our biggest tasks last time was we received peer review comments. Actually, concurrently at the same time, we also reviewed comments from your town engineer. So that came in, I think, just about the time we were before you. So over the holidays, we worked hard to respond to those comments. They clearly presented as a very thorough review of the plans from the peer reviewer. Many of the comments were resulting in adding more details, add more notes, tighten up the procedures on the plans. And so we went ahead and we revised all the plans to address those comments and the town engineer's comments. And I would like to, I'm not going to walk you through every comment. We gave you, we submitted a comment response letter to every comment, and also to assist in your review and the peer reviewer comment. We actually went in and highlighted and numbered every revision on the sheet so somebody could correspond and write back to the comment letter, knowing that we kind of had a quick turnaround. But walk you through some of what we believe to be the most meaningful comments that I think the commission needs to take a look at. First of all, this plan was added to the sheet. So the peer reviewer asked that we add a removals plan to the sheet. And that plan set that was added to the set. In addition to that, we added turtle management notes and also notes about when clearing can occur and how we're going to manage trees associated with the bats. So working with the environmental team, we have those, and then we added the turtle management plan, and Matt will show you that even in the last revision, we've actually created a single standalone turtle management plan to make it very clear as to what the parameters are. Another item that was in response to the peer review is and actually the town engineer. The town engineer asked us to provide very detailed elevations on the stormwater basins. They are deep in the engineering report, but the town engineer asked that we put those on to the plan. And also the peer reviewer asked us to put all the calculations for the infiltration testing right on the plan. The peer reviewer also asked a lot of questions for us to provide much more detailed information on the bridge structure itself. Where are the utilities going? How are you going to construct it? What are the design parameters for the bridge? As you recall, we had a detail of this and a typical detail. What we kind of did was we cut our structural engineers loose and provided all the detailed design information, what the design parameters are, what the loading is, We also created a cross section here, and we show that the utilities are going to be hung off the side of the bridge. And I think it was a good question from the peer reviewer, because sometimes you actually trench the utilities underneath the bridge. That's not the intent here. We're going to hang the water main and the force main off the sides of the bridge. As I indicated last time, these will be cast in place head walls, and then basically we drop precast units on it. But this plan partially was there, but we added a lot more information on the bridge construction itself into the plans. One other comment, the peer reviewer. So we had provided with this commission, I think the reason for denial was you were looking for more information on the phasing. We provided a much more detailed breakdown of the phasing plan as part of this initial submission. But the peer reviewer asked that we provide estimated construction schedule. How long are these phases going to take? I mean, on that. So this estimated schedule can then be overlapped with the information that Dennis has provided on turtle management and clearing for the bats. The two can be overlapped. The actual construction start date can't be established as we work our way through the entire approval process. But the nice thing is now we have an estimated time schedule you can understand how long these phases are going to take. And that was developed through working with our construction partner. In addition to that, we also provided one note, and I think it's an important note here, is we have, as you know, we have stormwater basins that are proposed on this site. Our plan was never to use those stormwater basins as erosion control features, and that was our intent, but the peer reviewer identified that. So we've added a note here that the contractor clearly understands that stormwater basins are for stormwater, sediment traps are for sediment, and we're going to keep those completely separate. And that was a good note to add on the plan. In addition to that, the peer review asked us to take a look at how much watershed we're sending to each sediment trap. So we went ahead and added 4 additional sediment traps to the plan, provide more erosion control. So on this plan, so initially we're bringing our water down to here, and it was coming to a single sediment trap here. By locating sediment traps up into here, that way we can divert the water, and then it'll overflow down through here. So in this area, we added 2 sediment traps. And on this area, we added 2 additional sediment traps too. So ultimately providing additional erosion control protection in those areas. In addition to that, the peer review asked us to give much more detail on the sediment trap design. If you look at the DEP manual, they talk about how much water, what the wet storage, what the dry storage is. We had given general parameters on the dimensions of those basins, how deep, how high, and the peer review asked us to give more detail on there so it can be managed out in the field. In addition to that, the peer reviewer asked us to provide, if you recall, part of our proposal, we have an existing stormwater basin that's up at the top end of the site that was designed, probably has been in place for 20 years as part of the Burkholder building. It's our plan to enhance that, to rebuild that basin and really make it pretty special. We're proposing that basin right now. It's a standard detention basin. The water comes in and the water goes out. We're proposing that to be a bioinfiltration basin. Essentially, that's a system where we bring in special soil. It's a filter. So when the stormwater goes through, it basically goes through the filter, and there's an under drain in there, and it has a liner underneath. So it's basically a system that allows that stormwater to be filtered as it gets through that remediation mix. So we were asked to give additional details on those plans to make sure it complies with the DEP manual. In addition to that, as I said, I wrapped up the town engineer's comments that were also put into here. They were very similar. They asked for more details, more labels on the plans for clarity's sake. One additional item is, as town staff indicated, we received a second round last week from the peer reviewer. We scrambled and we revised those plans also. Once again, they did not result in any any real plan changes, but it was additional details and clarifications they were asking for. We're also in receipt of the town engineer's second letter, and he's asked for primarily two things. He's asking for us to give a little more cross-section detail on the detention basins, and actually he's asking for sanitary sewer and road profiles. But I believe his letter indicates that those can all be wrapped up into the zoning application if we're successful going through here, and they can be conditions of approval. With that, I'm going to turn over to Matt Sanford for his presentation.
Good evening. For the record, it's Matthew Sanford, professional wetland scientist, registered soil scientist, 25 years experience with SLR. The first part of my presentation is piggybacking onto Dennis Quinn's presentation. Obviously, he's given you a very robust presentation this evening. What I wanted to do was to describe to the commission what they have in part of their plan set package. This plan was developed as part of the peer review responses. And before you on the screen is the actual turtle management plan that is part of the actual site plans themselves. So on this plan, you have a robust set of information, first starting with a color coding that's on the plan that indicates where temporary exclusion measures will be during construction, and then where the actual permanent turtle barrier structures will be following construction. And those are all color-coded here. In addition to that, we have invasive species management notes. As Dennis had indicated, in parts of this field, we observed autumn olive starting to come in. We observed Asiatic bittersweet along the edges starting to come into the field. We've identified the target species on the invasive species management plan. We've identified the means and methods of how those invasive species will be managed through this particular turtle management area. In addition to that, in your lower left-hand corner, you have the turtle management notes. These are notes that are generated by Connecticut DEP, Natural Diversity Database Program, as the notes that they want to see on plans to help protect eastern box turtles. Dennis has also reviewed these notes and added or modified them as he sees fit. He actually developed these notes originally for DEP probably back about 10 years ago, and he's now made some modifications to even enhance them more for this particular project. The details that talk about both the permanent and the temporary exclusionary fencing is located on the lower part of your plan. What you see here on the temporary exclusionary device, it's typically it's your geotextile silt fence. So it'll have a height of 36 inches above the ground, 6 inches will be buried in the ground. What's different about this is that we've added additional stakes in the silt fence, so we don't have any falling or detachment of the silt fence. So on your plan, every 5 feet, there will actually be a stake, and they rotate on back and front of the silt fence on both sides. And that's the temporary exclusionary device. One of the things we also added at the proposed bridge crossing, obviously we didn't want to run this silt fence across the flow direction of the actual intermittent water course and wetland in that area, so we'd be using chicken wire fencing in that location to prevent eastern box turtles during construction from moving into the construction zone. Then the permanent barrier here, as the detailed here, will be almost what I consider as a concrete curb. And in combination with the retaining walls located on the southern side of wetland number 8. So you have retaining walls that'll keep the turtles out. And then secondly, you have this concrete curb in those areas where there are no retaining walls. That concrete curb will be running through these portions of the site. And lastly on the plan is the actual planting plan. What plantings will occur inside these habitat creation areas. We've picked a host of what we call is nutrient poor species. So those are species that sometimes can fix their own nitrogen because we're going to be creating a sandy environment. Our nutrients are going to be very limited in those environments, which is good because that keeps keeps those areas as being sandy, and not a lot of intrusion of plants that like a little more nitrogen and phosphorus. And those plants include nitrogen fixing sweet fern, little blue stem, New Jersey tea, as well as gray stem dogwood. These are typical species that you will find on many of our sandier floodplains and our former sand and gravel pits. These are the early colonizers of those particular sites, and those are the plants with the quantities are located on the plan. Okay. So that's the turtle management plan. I want to talk a little bit about riparian zones. This topic was, I believe, brought up by the commission in the past, as well as brought up by interveners and the public, specifically along Hop Brook, located here in the southwestern portion of the site. So when we look at riparian zones, we're looking to protect a particular watercourse. Usually what we're looking to provide is protection of the temperatures, the ambient temperatures in the particular watercourse, because that's what supports the macroinvertebrates. That's what supports the fishery species and any other critters that might be using that watercourse. In addition to that, we want to look at, do we have an adequate buffer to filter out nutrients that may be coming off the uplands that are adjacent to the watercourse, right? So those really are two critical functions of a riparian zone that we're trying to protect. So when we look at the proposed plan and we look at where Hop Brook is in relation to the development, we have buffers along Hop Brook that are currently forested and will remain forested. We have buffers that are currently, riparian buffers that are currently meadow, that will remain meadow. Stormwater basins that'll be created or actually planted with native plants will function as meadows. So those are actually become part of the riparian zone. Where you lose riparian zone is when you actually have some type of hard element. In this case, if we look at this particular spot in the southeastern part of the site is where that retaining wall and road begins. If we look to the northwest is where the house and the road ends. That's where our riparian zone ends. So when we start to look at this from a far view, we start to notice that our riparian zone along Hop Brook is extensive. The riparian zone, if we measure from Hop Brook, ordinary high water mark, up to detention basin 430, right at this location here, we have 235 linear feet of riparian zone being maintained. If we take that a step farther and we include that basin as part of our riparian zone, which is we should because it's a vegetated native basin, that then takes us up to this proposed roadway. That riparian zone buffer is now 430 feet. If we take a look at basin 440, located here, we have the detention basin that is located from the ordinary high water mark that's located right about here. As you measure up to its western extent, that is 305 feet of vegetated buffer that remains. If we then take that riparian zone from this corner of the property and extend it up to where the development is proposed on the northwest portion of the project, you're looking at a riparian zone of 650 feet. So what does this all mean? What are the requirements? What are the typical suggestions for riparian zones? So if you look back, Connecticut DEP Fisheries Division back in the early 2000s actually developed a position statement for coldwater fishery resources such as or similar to Hop Brook. This was developed by Brian Murphy. He's since retired. We'll give this to the commission for part of the record. But in general, their position statement for maintaining riparian zones along coldwater fishery resources is 100 feet. 100 feet is the preferred buffer zone to maintain thermal temperatures in the Hop Brook watercourse, as well as any nutrient management that may be coming off the uplands. 100 feet is what our state, Connecticut DEP Fishery Division, recommends for riparian buffers. And as I just demonstrated, you can see that this project is well in excess of 100 feet. At the end of the day, if this project moves forward, you will have buffers, riparian buffers along Hop Brook that range from 430 feet to 650 feet. So I wanted to have a few closing remarks as it relates to wetlands this evening. There's been discussions both from some of the commission members as well as from the interveners related to tree clearing. We have reduced our tree clearing on this project from the original application and actually from the application that was submitted as part of this new permit application. We're down to 17 acres of forest clearing as part of this project. That's a reduction. One of the reasons it was reduced was relocating the building that was located at this location just east of Wetland 5 and moving it to the northwest portion of the site. That reduced our clearing significantly in that area. The movement of that building to this northwest corner does not adversely impact wetland number 5 or 7. As you recall in my previous presentations, we have some limited clearing in the 100-foot review area in this location here. That is actually located down gradient from the wetland. So that wetland sits a little higher than the actual proposed development. That wetland has a small intermittent water course that flows in this direction towards the field. We are maintaining that through flow and not interrupting that. So we have no adverse impacts to wetland 5 or 7 at this location. I think it's important to note, and I just explained in one general area in Hop Brook that we've maintained vegetated upland buffers along the wetlands on the site. So wetland 5, 7, to protect those functions and values of those wetlands. And I believe that the peer review reviewers are also in agreement with the adequate buffers that have been provided on this site. Most importantly, as you're wearing your wetlands hats, there's no direct wetland impacts on this project. We do have a crossing or spanning of the existing wetland on site. If you had to cross a wetland on site, the most least environmentally damaging practical alternative to cross a wetland is to span it. And that is what's being proposed by this project. Other comments that have been raised in the past is about hydrologic impacts to the wetlands on site. When you develop upgrading of wetlands, is there a chance to impact the hydrologic regime of those wetlands? As has been demonstrated at our previous hearing and through the calculations that we've developed, and also I think in agreement with the peer reviewers, we've demonstrated that there will be no hydrologic regime impacts to the wetlands on the site based on the proposed development. As I reiterated earlier, we provided 200-foot plus buffers up to the detention basins, and then beyond that, 400 to 600-foot riparian buffers of Hop Brook. Stormwater management, as has been described, both in the previous public hearing and tonight's public hearing, meets the 2024 Stormwater Quality Manual that's been developed by Connecticut DEP. Let me say that again. It meets the requirements of the 2024 Stormwater Quality Manual. And lastly, we've demonstrated that we have a robust sediment and erosion control plan. Again, that's been designed in accordance with the 2024 Connecticut DEP Soil and Erosion Control Guidelines. So having said all that, and as I stated at the last public hearing, it's in my professional opinion that this project, as designed and as modified, will have no adverse impact to the wetlands and or Hop Brook on the site. Thank you.
And I just want to confirm on the record, Mr. Chair, that we did submit just now a copy of the position statement for utilization of 100-foot buffer zones to protect riparian areas in Connecticut by Brian D. Murphy. of the DEP Inland Fisheries Division, the document that Matt just mentioned, and we gave enough copies that hopefully you all got one and some extra to make sure the interveners could have one as well. That concludes our presentation for now of the additional information that we have submitted in response to the peer review and town engineer comments, Mr. Chair, and I'll reserve the right to address any questions or comments that come up, and then to be able to speak at the very end of the hearing to provide any final responses. Thank you.
I would just ask, do any of the commissioners have any questions for the applicant or any of their experts?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, I do too.
Well, go ahead.
Thank you. My question is for Dennis. I was just curious if you could share your opinion on the long-term viability of the box turtle population on site, and an opinion on if the project enhances that viability or harms it in any way.
So my professional opinion, and based on other projects that I've done throughout Connecticut, and I'd be happy to take this commission to those projects if they ever wanted to see them. I can't publicly announce where they are because it's a protected species. I believe what we're doing with these enhancements and protection measures will actually increase the viability of this population. We will be enhancing the habitat, creating scrublands, and creating enhanced and functional nesting areas for this species. Will there still be mortality of these turtles moving off site and from here to there? Of course, that's going to happen. But I think we are going to limit that, and this population will remain viable for the long term.
Thank you.
Yep.
Actually, I have a question for you too. Sure. If you could go to the slide that shows where the turtle signals were, and I'm looking, the ones where you sort of monitored them.
Yeah, let me just, I got to figure out how to get this one down.
Oh, it's a different presentation.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, that one. That one's
There's
fine.
a bigger version I can pull.
Okay.
Yep.
So as I was looking at it,
Sure.
if I'm looking in the area where the majority of the housing units are, I think I see like 4 or 5 signals for turtles that are in there.
Here?
No, down below, right there.
Here, yeah.
Yeah. Do I see like 3 or 4 dots?
Yes.
So currently in the plan, that's not a lot of them as compared to the other places. Your idea is that those will be taken out before construction. If you can find them.
Oh, we will have, they still have transmitters to today. We will have those transmitters on and new ones put on.
And out. And so since nominally once you get done with the construction and then the installation of the barriers, you'll still have a way of checking how many of them are back in that area.
Yes. I mean, to put it simply, McLean is going to hate me at the end of this process.
Okay.
Hate me.
Okay.
The reality of it is that over my 25-year career on doing this, I lost 1 turtle during a construction activity. I've lost about 15 to turtles leaving and going into neighboring properties and getting hit by lawnmowers. We did it. We installed an entire highway in Connecticut without killing a single turtle. And 3 of the turtles were killed by abutting properties because they mowed their lawn during the spring when the turtles were on their property. And not only that, and I can't give the exact location, but again, I can take you to it. That is now the highest functioning turtle population in the state, and the only population in the state where you can go on any day during the active season and catch a hatchling or 2 or 3-year-old box turtle. That's unheard of in the state of Connecticut. It just doesn't happen.
Great. Thank you. So now I have one more question about the maintenance after all of the installed sort of basins that you added. Does that change any of the original maintenance schedule that's going on that you, I think, had talked about in some of the previous presentations? Because you basically have installed more sort of separation zones, right? I'm trying to remember the term you used. You have the main basin, and then you have the is it the silt? Is it the sediment traps? The sediment traps.
Right. So for the record, Matt Sanford from SLR. So question related to, based on the native plantings that are going into the basins, how does it relate to the management of those basins long-term? So how it works is, as stormwater comes into those basins, it usually comes into a sediment trap. That sediment trap sometimes has stone or riprap in it so that it's accessible for sediment removal over a period of time, right? So typically with stormwater basins, you're looking at them once a year to make sure that you're looking at levels of accumulation in the sediment trap, right? Is that your first, well, it's not your first line of defense. Your first lines of defense are the catch basins and the other stormwater structures before it actually gets to the actual basins. But your forebay is your first, if sediment gets to that point, that's your first line of defense in the actual basin itself. Then from there, it goes over typically a riprap berm, right? That slows the water down, allows that sediment to filter out in the forebay, and then that passes or penetrates through that filter berm into a vegetated basin. And those basins have to be maintained. Typically, the general rule of thumb is we don't want to see a whole heck of a lot of woody vegetation in those basins. We don't want to see trees, et cetera, taking over those basins. Are meant to be more of a meadow area, herbaceous area, so you have a high density of root mass and vegetation absorbing nutrients, right, that are coming into those basins. So typically, those are mowed once a year, and obviously have to be inspected yearly for maintenance of woody vegetation and maybe trying to colonize those basins.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I have a question for Dennis again. Since the turtles in the new proposal are going to be pretty close to humans, how well do the turtles tolerate humans? They don't care? Do they care about humans? They just do their own thing, or?
Yeah, it's actually interesting. Each turtle will have like its own personality. Some don't like people. Some will come out and greet you. It's really strange. It just depends on the individual turtle. I actually, when we were doing this large highway project, I did a lot of analysis on this, how they responded to highway noise, highway activity, construction activities, rock blasting, all sorts of things like that. They didn't, I mean, this is all perception, human perception onto animals. They did not seem to be bothered by it. I would have turtles positioned, I didn't position them there, they were naturally there, and they were about 20 feet away from blasting activities, and they did not even respond, they didn't move, they didn't care. They were probably afraid and scared, but ultimately going through a construction process as this would take, you know, will there be a little bit of will they be a little nervous? Probably. Are they going to adjust to it? Yes, they'll be fine, and long term, they'll forget about it.
So they're not going to be stressed and like,
no, they're not going to go
laying
anywhere.
eggs and
Oh no,
yeah.
no. They won't go anywhere. They will be there. They will lay eggs. They actually, one of the biggest problems we have with construction, which is why I'm a favor of, you have to exclude them. Once you clear a zone, these turtles will come in and lay eggs under a dump truck. They don't care.
Any other questions for the applicant from the commission?
Yep. Question in regards to the forest. I know you guys said there's a save of a few acres of forest being cut. With the movement of the dwelling from one side to the other, and you're going to be adding some forest in there, is that extra forest part of the savings, or is that in addition?
So when we moved the unit out of that area, we reduced the clearing in that corner that Dennis indicated by a half acre.
Mhm.
In addition, we have an area that I mentioned, reforestation area. That's not included in the calculations. That's above and beyond the things that we presented. Yes.
Okay.
And essentially, we're not clearing there. We're just kind of just taking the meadow and just adding vegetation to the meadow.
Do you know how much acreage wise that addition will be?
The new reforestation area is another half acre.
Okay.
So probably between the two added up, it equals 1 acre. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any further questions from the commission? I'd like to invite B&L up to make any presentation or comments they would like.
I have it printed as well. You can leave that up. Or if there's an. Or that. Good evening. Thanks for having me back. For anyone new, I'm Johanna Duffy, representative of Barton LaJudas. BNL is a third-party reviewer. We were brought on to assist the town, the Conservation Commission, and Inland Waters and Watercourses Agency specifically with the review of this project because the application was deemed to be significant. So as previously mentioned, we've been... Yes, that I can even hear that, although that's annoying to me, but yes, sorry. So we've been involved in all of the various rounds of submissions and reviews. Some of those dates were provided earlier, so I won't go back through those. We did a second review and submission that's on the website. The applicant, as they mentioned, provided a very quick turnaround and provided comments on that second round of BNL review on the 16th. Barton and LaJudas received that yesterday on the 19th. On Monday, we were able to do a quick review of that third submission coming from the applicant. We have put together a list of findings and statements that I'll read for the record now. Those have also been submitted as of not that long ago to the town, to Brittany, so I'm sure everybody will get a copy of those. So this is completion of our review of the third submission from the applicant. Submission number 3, revised plan sheets and responses clarify and address the majority of BNL's previously provided questions and comments. In particular, the newly provided turtle protection and enhancement plan sheet, TP, provides a much clearer understanding of the types of temporary and permanent barrier fencing proposed, the locations for fence installation, the location of the habitat enhancement activities, and specifics related to plantings in the habitat creation and enhancement areas. So our second comment submission or review had a lot of specific and targeted comments related to turtle findings and habitat impacts and such. So a lot of those were addressed. One item that was previously mentioned that remains missing are just the types of plantings proposed for the late successional shrubland, mixed herbaceous shrub habitat and nesting zone areas. In addition to the species and numbers, which were previously provided, planting details typically also include whether plantings are live stakes, container, plugs, etc., and sizes as appropriate. Such details can easily be added to plan sheet TP. This should not hold up consideration of the current application. It is recommended that the adoption of and adherence to the recommended protection strategies for turtles and related notes and measures by Dennis Quinn be included as a condition of approval, just to make sure that those are followed and part of the project moving forward. As described in comment response R1, this is going to be specific to our stormwater review. The bioretention soil is below the entirety of Basin 300's bottom. The detail should be revised to demonstrate this, as it currently shows the bioretention soil and stone stopping at the riprap berm. Based on the comment response provided, the bioretention media should be shown as continuous beneath the sediment forebay and riprap berm. A quick update to the bioretention filtration basin system detail on plan sheet SD7 should be made. This should not hold up consideration of the current application. One thing that I want to note before I mention the last statement and finding that I have to present today is that it's important to understand that the timing of when BNL was brought on board is viewing the current development and the current application as proposed. So when we are providing comments, when we're doing our review and making statements and findings, we're looking at the merits of the application that is currently being proposed and not comparing it back to any prior proposals or applications or submissions. So with that, the only comment that remains outstanding is BNL overall review comment number 1. The question was posed of whether a development scenario that does not include the 5-building cluster on the west side of the property related infrastructure is more beneficial to and less impactful on items like habitat, flow conditions, consolidation of infrastructure, etc., than the currently proposed development scenario. As we heard at the beginning of this meeting, that topic was addressed verbally, but this was not responded to in writing after BNL's letter number 2, which is why we're bringing it back up. As BNL had previously mentioned and put in writing, the separation of this cluster from other dwelling units, the length of new interior roadway required for access, the distance between the cluster and its proposed stormwater retention basin DET 430, and the distance from the cluster to other on-site amenities appear to warrant justification of the need for the 5 buildings at this location. No response to this item was provided in the most recent McLean submission. It is recognized that this item may be determined to not directly associate with the responsibility of the Conservation Commission and Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency and its review. It may be decided that this item is better evaluated and considered as part of the Zoning Commission review during the zoning application process. Those are our findings and statements at this time based on our 3rd review.
Thank you very much. Do any of the commissioners have questions for BNL? Going once, going twice? No. Thank you guys very much. I think I can speak on behalf of the commission. We do appreciate the work you guys did. I think it'll help us make a very informed decision. So thank you. At this time, I'd like to invite the interveners up to make any comment or presentations. Yeah. Sorry.
I do have one more question for SLR. The utilities going over the bridge, they're going to be hung off the side. Get to that cross section. You have the water main on one side.
Correct.
And what was on the other side? Just,
It's a 2-inch sanitary line,
oh, so it's a sewer line.
sewer line.
On
And then
the-
electrical will also be hung off. Yes.
Okay, I couldn't.
Yeah, we're not, what I think BNL was asking us to do is be very clear that there's not, like a secondary impact as you trench utilities across the bridge. So we've been very successful in other projects where we're able to hang those. I mean, you see it, the utilities hanging off the side of the bridge for other environmental. But yes, that's what you're going to see. You'll see some utilities on the right and some utilities on the left hanging off the side of the bridge.
Okay, I saw one said water main, the other one it didn't
Yeah.
say.
Oh, it didn't say. That's a sanitary sewer line.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
That was
Thank
it.
you.
Thanks.
Chair, if I may.
Yes.
I just want to reiterate that the independent reviewer, this is their last meeting here. So just if there are any questions that pop into your head for them, please do not hesitate to ask.
Thank you. And I'll welcome the interveners.
Good evening. I'm not sure this thing extends far enough up for me to really be able to use it. So what do you guys want? You want me to do this or you want me to just talk? Raise it up? All right. Well, first of all, thank you again to the commission for taking the time to listen to both sides of this important issue. We feel thus far as though we've heard, and we appreciate that and ask that you hear us again tonight. It's been said that the most effective presentations consist of 3 parts. Tell them what you're going to tell them, and tell them what you told them. So my job tonight is to briefly tell you what it is that I'm going to tell you, and I want to advance the slides, but return doesn't work. Yes. For the record, my name is Kevin Gregg. I live at 9 Hop Hollow. I am both an abutter and an environmental intervener. So this is what we're going to tell you. After making some very brief introductory remarks, another of our abutters and environmental interveners is going to be up here to talk about relevance of some prior testimony that's been received, talk about some of the residual impacts and perceived benefits of the most recent submission. In addition, she and a second one of our abutters and environmental interveners will talk about some unresolved environmental impacts, and then we'll make some brief summary remarks concerning regulations specifically. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jess. But before she gets up here, there's just one comment that I want to make, and that's that we have never been opposed to the what. I don't think very many people would be opposed to the need for additional senior housing. I'm not that far away from reading that myself, to be honest with you. But the point is, it's the where that obviously concerns us, not the what. So with that, Jess, I'm going to hand this over to you.
Go back one slide. Just hit the arrow. Okay. Can everyone hear? Is this good? Okay, great. Okay. Thank you, committee, for your continued consideration.
Could you identify yourself?
I'm going to.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Of your continued consideration of this application and the concerns surrounding it. My name is Jessica Franks, and I live at 4 Country Club. I grew up in this area and have had a deep respect for McLean. As a child, I caroled there at Christmas, and later I visited my grandmother as she recuperated in its facilities. When my son is home from college, he works there as a server, a job that I recommended to him because it would give him a chance to serve our senior population as he prepares to go into ministry. I am also an intervener. We, the interveners, absolutely empathize with the myriad testimonies last meeting regarding how McLean has cared for people and their family members as they have done the same for us. But that is not what we, the interveners, are questioning or protesting. We don't want to take away these seniors' health care or community. In the first year of these meetings, both McLean and the interveners learned what is expected of us during testimony, and your committee has continued to request that all testimony be relevant to the wetlands and conservation regulatory realm. We, the interveners, are striving to follow the committee's request. McLean leadership is not. On December 16th, McLean used your public forum to run a sympathy campaign. They have hired a high-powered public relations group to flood you with information that you are not even allowed to use in your decisions as a wetlands committee. You know that, and they know that. Yes, the non-wetlands related testimonies occurred primarily during the public comment section. Yes, the seniors who testified were well-intentioned and sincere in speaking about their own experiences of McLean's care for them and their loved ones. We have been there too, and some of us are nearly seniors. We understand. But as you could see from the buttons that the McLean advocates were wearing, McLean stacked the public record and the public hearing with this testimony. Oftentimes, the testimony that it seems they themselves helped craft, made obvious by the copy and paste nature of many talking points and the McLean bus shuttling residents to the meeting. McLean knew this was not relevant testimony for you, the Wetlands Committee, for your decision, and they knew they could not include it during their allotted time. So they did it during the public forum instead. It was a clear attempt to influence your decision not with science and regulation, but with sympathy. Their scientists and Hartford lawyers talk a big game about following rules and regulations, and then their PR folks try to influence your decision through other means. We wanted to take a minute to call it out and highlight it for the record. What you didn't hear during public testimony was anyone arguing that it's great for nearly 20 acres of forest to be cleared, wetlands dewatered, polluted runoff to flow into the pristine hot brook, bird meadow habitat cut in half, and animal habitat decimated. That would have been relevant testimony, but repugnant. We are here at a wetlands meeting to discuss a revised plan that provides even less housing than the previous application, yet has nearly the same amount of environmental destruction on the wetlands and meadow and 17 acres of forest, all for the sake of constructing 40 new houses that don't include healthcare facilities, but do have driveways. Especially impactful is the additional road and 5 duplexes. As the Barton report mentions, McLean has failed to justify its existence given its impact. Is this shift of 10 homes really just for the turtles? This number was just recently changed to 17, but it was at the sake of the meadow acreage. So 17 or 20, however you want to call it. In relation to feasible alternatives, we must ask, why is McLean insisting on this sprawling, high environmental impact development that nearly doubles the campus footprint, destroys more trees than the original plan, and almost as much meadow, but only adds 40 homes? After all, the Goodrich building added 55 homes and occupies less than 5 acres. If this was just about providing elderly housing, there are clearly other ways. But this isn't just about housing. This is about market research showing that duplexes sell for a greater amount of money. This is not the plan that houses the most seniors and protects the most land. It is the plan that makes the most money with the greatest chance of still squeaking by with approval. Let's turn our attention back to the meadow and its turtles for a moment. My water bottle. Sorry, one moment. Much better. McLean says they have shifted a large amount of their plan based on Dennis Quinn's turtle report. Reducing the impact on the eastern box turtle population is good, but it's reduced, meaning there is still impact. A sizable cluster where the male turtles hibernate at the elbow of the meadow tree line, the cluster of red dots there, would be eliminated by the units toward the south end of the extra road and 5 duplexes. Additionally, those units would still result in human activity near the hibernation grounds of the female turtles west of Hop Hollow Road. Since we know from the Quinn report that the turtles cross the road, those units will likely impact migration of female turtles as well. But let's be sure to remember how we even got here. In the original application hearings, SLR scientists claimed there were no turtles, to which we, the interveners, responded with photos and documentation of 20. Then, in a later round of those hearings, Dennis Quinn, as we've met him tonight, their newly hired turtle scientist, himself claimed the area could not sustain long-term an eastern box turtle population. I went back to the hearing and transcribed it myself. He says, referring to the land, as is, without any development. Is this site really, when it comes down to it, worth protection? When you think about long-term sustainability of box turtle populations in Connecticut, they're not long-term sustainable unless they are in large, unfragmented blocks of habitat. This, although it does maintain the critical habitat mosaics that the species is dependent on, it is not a large, unfragmented habitat block. Long-term sustainability of the box turtle on this property is not a favorable outcome. It's not going to happen. There's too many already existing impacts to this population. Fast forward to the current application. It turns out, as you've seen tonight in this new report, the box turtles are thriving. But by his own testimony last round, this plot of unfragmented land is already too small. So any claim that this new plan will somehow preserve this thriving turtle population while building on over 20 of its acres is preposterous. Lastly, I'd like to address the dewatering of Wetlands 8, which, as you guys know, is the long oblong water section there. When the first application was rejected, one of the points the committee was concerned with was the dewatering of Wetlands 8 by removing the water through drains to the basin down at the bottom there. Still, that is still happening in this new plan. As we can see on the plan and its elevations, this forest I'm not using red pointers, I'm just using using motions here. Where was I? This, let's see. There we go. Thank you. This forest drains into this wetland. Once these homes and drainage are constructed, a large percentage of that water is channeled down here to the detention basin and released here at the bottom of the wetlands. This plan, like the last one, remains unsuitable for this land. In closing, is our concern just about turtles? No. Is it just about a forest? No. Is it just about a meadow? Just about wetlands? Just about Hot Brook? No. Our concern is for all of these treasures and the humans who steward them, which exist in inextricable unity and interdependence. Surely we can find a better way forward together. Thank you.
Good evening. For the record, I'm Andrew Grossman, 17 Hop Hollow. We appreciate your time with us this evening. We received the Barton response on Thursday, the 15th, dated on the 14th. SLR's response, which was dated the 16th, we received on the 19th. We respectfully request that the public hearing be continued for the purpose of preparing our response from what we've been able to do tonight so far. Thank you.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay? All right. John Bunn, 15 Hop Hollow, a butter and intervener. Okay. Here we go. I only have 2 slides. So that's, I'm really going to try to align what Jess has talked about to where the regulations that are most important to this committee and commission come into play. I know I'm a new face for this commission, but I felt compelled to really stand up here and do the closing for today because even though you haven't directly heard from me, I've been very engaged in this process. I've attended and listened to all the meetings and read every piece of this documentation. I can empathize with you on how complex this project is. I want to thank you, as was mentioned before by my colleagues, that we appreciate your patience, integrity, and diligence throughout this process. Your recognition that this is a significant undertaking with irreversible consequences. We also recognize and empathize that you have to contend with a continued onslaught of PR from the McLean PR machine and pressure from town officials, only interested in increasing the grand list. This makes your job even that much more hard. There's a lot of pressure on you. We respect that. I can also relate to all the people here that attest to the great healthcare services received by McLean's. And I'm sure you're confused why there is so much opposition to an expansion. I will tell you, given McLean's stellar reputation, it is shocking to see them put forth such a reckless proposal. You should be shocked. I also want to be clear, as you heard earlier, the interveners recognize the need for in town for senior housing. We want McLean's to be successful, and we want the town's grand list to increase. However, that needs to be done with integrity and care for the environment in a way that prioritizes those most in need. This plan does none of that. Most importantly, it also needs to be done in a way that meets the standards set forth in the town regulations. So let's get into it. To that, this is what I'm going to talk about today. I want to highlight two areas where the current application does not meet town regulations or address the concerns expressed in your previous denial of their application. Suitability and alternatives. So regardless of how you view the hydrology debate, when you look at this application on its own merits against these two requirements, the application simply does not meet the standards. So let's talk about suitability. Regulation 10.2G charges the commission to consider the suitability of this project on the proposed area. You are tasked with discerning the appropriateness of a project that clear cuts 17 acres, adds 7 acres of impervious surface, which leads to increased flooding, impacts Hop Brook through construction and ongoing maintenance, and does not sufficiently consider the negative impact it will have on the environment and wildlife. This project is not just a change in scenery. It will destroy a natural system that currently manages drainage and provides habitat. The Commission's own denial, back in May 28th, you raised a red flag regarding Hop Brook. You noted that the salt and pollutants from the new roads and lawns would likely degrade the watercourse. Now, while the applicant's new documents show that the volume of water might not increase, they do not provide proof regarding the quality of that water. We see flow rates, but we do not see a chemical study of the salt and pesticide concentrations that will inevitably wash into the brook. Until we have modeled proof that the water quality will be protected, this project remains a big gamble with Simsbury's environment. So when you think about these impacts and the suitability through the lens of just common sense, this project just doesn't hold up. As my father used to say, it doesn't pass the sniff test. As Jess so clearly laid out, it's just not a risk we're taking. This isn't something that can be undone. Which leads to the fundamental question. This is the big question for us to wrestle with. Is all this complexity to build out so close to wetlands really even necessary? Is there a better alternative? As this was built, so let's talk about feasible and prudent alternatives. This is the legal heart of the matter. Regulation 10.2B. The law is clear. If a prudent alternative exists with less impact, this permit should not be granted. This has always, to me, been the most baffling deficiency by the applicant. In their first application, they stated resolutely there were no feasible and prudent alternatives, only to come back in 6 months with a plan, an alternative plan. Now, with this latest proposal, guess what they're saying? There are no feasible and prudent alternatives. It seems to me they interpret the requirement in 10.2 in the context of impact on their bottom line, instead of its stated intent for the applicant to include feasible and prudent alternatives as it relates to the impact on wetlands, not their bottom line. More concerning is the Commission has made multiple requests throughout the public hearings and in your denial letter for the first application for the applicant to expand consideration of alternative layouts. which among other things should consider alternative housing types to reduce the footprint of the project. This still has never been addressed. While McLean's can try and argue this new plan is an improvement when evaluated on its own merit, as it should be, in many ways, it's worse. No matter where you land on the hydrology debate, do we really believe there isn't a better alternative on their 110-acre campus? Do you believe they've done their due diligence to find an alternative that has less impact on wetlands and watercourses? I'd like to know if it's better for the turtles if they built somewhere else on the campus. We don't know. We haven't seen any of those alternatives. Wouldn't it be better if there was an alternative that kept more trees? It's great that they're doing 17, but it's not 20 versus 17. It's, 2 versus 17. Have they explored alternative housing types? Why do they insist on only considering duplexes? You've asked them to consider other types. Have they really looked at all options to reduce the footprint, as you've asked? Why are they insisting on a massive build out for 5 isolated structures? Barton Logan's called this out twice, as you've heard. Do you realize there is a butters in this room whose house would be closer to McLean's main facilities than these 5 buildings? The town of Simsbury deserves the best alternative. Our regulations require it. So, in closing, our only request as interveners is for you to simply evaluate the acceptability of this application on its own merits. Apply the same high standards you used discerning the first application. We ask you to consider, is this the best alternative or just the latest one? The applicant has checked some boxes, but they have ignored the commission's call for a fundamental rethink of the site layout to minimize impact. And we cannot accept less impact than the last rejected plan as our standard for success. We deserve better. Simsbury deserves a design that prioritizes the ecosystem and meets the prudent standard defined by our regulations. Until the applicant provides a site-specific water quality study and a layout that significantly reduces the construction footprint, we ask the commission to find this application unsuitable. Let's protect the environment today for Simsbury's tomorrow. I really appreciate you guys' time and all the effort that you're putting into this.
Thank you. Do any of the commissioners have any questions for the interveners?
I do. Excuse me. For the interveners, the question I think for the wetland side boils down to the water quality issue going into Hopbrook and the dewatering of the wetlands. Now, one of the statements was that a standard practice was to have repairing an area of 100 feet or more, or in order to protect the waterways. And we've actually heard that this is several times larger than that. So I'm just asking the interviewers from their perspective, with since that is sort of the standard that has been used in the past, what from your perspective is lacking in that? Is there a piece of the puzzle that's not included in that comes into it? And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just asking that from your perspective.
The applicant's engineers are correct. A 100-foot barrier is generally accepted as commonplace. However, it is not a state requirement. It is generally left up to local municipalities to determine what a reasonable buffer zone should be. That 100 feet also assumes a great deal of intermediate flora, trees, other growth that helps filter any of the, or at least some of the contaminants that may be in the water.
And that makes sense, but I thought a lot of that area was undisturbed from where it is now. Is that a true statement?
Correct. As far as I know, I mean, you guys live right in the corner. I would say that's true. Yeah, with the exception of the building of the basins.
Oh,
yes.
of the basin. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Going once, going twice. Thank you very much. Before we get started with public comment, I would just like to remind the public to please keep your comments limited to comments on the wetlands concerns and conservation concerns. I think last time we did a 5-minute limit for commenters. If there's no objections from the commission, I'd like to maintain that. And lastly, I apologize in advance if I mispronounce any names. So we'll start off public comment with Beverly Earl.
Can we get this off the? Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'll introduce myself in a second, for your listening and being willing to serve on this committee. I am Beverly Earl of Simsbury. I grew up. Oh, sorry. Thank you. How's this? Okay, there we go. Okay. I'm Beverly Earl. I live in Simsbury at McLean. I grew up in West Hartford and worked for Bentley University for 35 years, retiring as professor emerita. My husband and I left our home in Cambridge to live near our daughter and her family in Suffield. And after 10 years, we moved to an independent apartment in McLean in February of 2025, almost a year. Tonight, I will be brief. I did have 3 points, but since B&L spoke, I only have 2 points now, so that's good. And then a conclusion. Number 1, after reviewing the video of December 16th hearing, I wanted to point out the words of one of the interveners who spoke last time. I think it's very germane to what this issue is about. I owe a thank you to Mr. Grieg, Apollo, sitting somewhere, for being so clear and revealing. He called the land in question, owned by McLean, a quote, pristine recreational destination for so many, and that the meadow brought, quote, personal solace. He suggested all of us were missing the big picture. He called McLean's land a pristine piece of recreational space that needs unimpeded accessibility. While I'm sure Mr. Grieg has environmental concerns, and I believe he's talked about them today, the true concern for him and many of the interveners is to use the land without restriction, land which interveners don't own or control. The interveners will delay by the seemingly innocuous process of asking for more and more clarification to keep using the meadows for their personal recreation and solace in perpetuity. The price to build will increase dramatically. Delay is a victory for the interveners. This is a well-known tactic which often becomes a court's problem. Let's not do that in Simsbury. Number 2, in a letter dated January 15th posted on the Simsbury website, Mr. John Picoult argued that the inland wetlands and watercourses regulations of Simsbury requires, and section 10.2G, requires a consideration of the suitability or unsuitability, which we heard about today, of such activity to the area for which it is proposed. He opines that it is, quote, clear that the construction of a high-density housing development on this part of McLean's property does not represent a suitable activity for the area, unquote. First, it's hard to argue that this is a high-density housing situation. Second, it is Mr. Picolt's personal assessment that the plan is unsuitable, saying in the letter that although the committee should read the experts' reports, they need to use their common sense, and that the project has environmental risk simply not worth taking, as you saw on one of the slides. He concluded by asking the commission to honor both the letter and the spirit of the commission's authority, as stated in the regulations, that, quote, the purpose of these regulations to protect the citizens of the state by making provisions for the protection, preservation, maintenance, and use of inland waterways. And there's more to that. However, he did not mention the rest of the section, which says, in part, by providing an orderly process to balance the need for the economic growth of the state and the use of its land with the need to protect its environment and ecology. I underscore that omitted language. Any development should be stopped on this property, he argues. I submit that his interpretation is not supported by the regulations and the history of the commission's decisions. So I skipped the part about B&L. Conclusion, McLean has acted in good faith with this process. McLean originally submitted for 52 units, but replaced it with a 40-unit plan, with a dramatically changed layout to lessen any impact on the environment. Environmental regulations are not meant to be anti-development, nor do they guarantee no changes in the future on the land. McLean has a 110-acre campus with a 4,400-acre McLean Game Refuge open to the public. I'm almost finished, one more paragraph. I doubt you could find many facilities in the U.S. that care for senior citizens in such an environment. McLean is not the enemy here. Rather, it provides a desirable living accommodation in many forms for people like me, my husband, and in the future, perhaps for your grandparent, parent, or maybe even you and your friends. I urge the committee to delay no longer, but instead to vote to approve. Let McLean work through the rest of the steps for approval and begin building the exciting new addition to the community. McLean has been a good steward of the land and never forgotten Senator McLean's commitment to the environment as well as to senior citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, I have Larry Schmidt.
My name is Larry Schmidt, and I am a resident of McLean, have been for just over 3 years. But let me start by saying no one has told me what I should or shouldn't say today. After 34 years in Bethel, northern Fairfield County, and 15 years in Florida, my wife and I decided it was time to come back to Connecticut. We chose the Hartford area because our son lives in West Hartford. And we picked McLean for a variety of reasons. But one of them was we could see that they were good stewards of the environment. Just driving up to the place with all the trees, tasteful landscaping, and the fact that they had the 4,400 acre game preserve were important factors for us. Now, does anyone think that a set of conditions exist which would satisfy all the interveners? They seem to prefer the status quo. But the problem with the status quo is it doesn't move Simsbury forward. There is a need for senior housing in the town. The interveners agree with that. And these units will be built somewhere. Why not Simsbury? Because when they are built and occupied, Simsbury will benefit from the tax revenue with no impact on the education system. And there will be 40 beautiful residences for seniors who may want to move to Simsbury or stay in Simsbury to live out their final years. I urge you to approve this application. And thank you for your diligence and for letting me speak.
Thank you. Next, I have Anthony Festaya.
Oh, I think I've got it. Thank you. This has been, I really don't know, either the fourth or the third meeting that I've attended here, and I'm very, very much impressed at the thoroughness of the people who make these presentations. I think it's great. Whoops. I didn't break it. I didn't do it.
I can't find my cursor
Okay.
to stop it.
Two guys walk into a bar.
What happened? I can't find my cursor.
One of them says, I don't know about it. That's nonsense. No, it is not.
There it is. There it is.
I don't know. I don't know where it is.
I think I could do.
Want me to go back?
Nah, you're good. You're good. You're good.
Oh my god.
Just lost.
I can do it.
You could do it.
Yeah,
for-
I'll,
okay.
if this guy
So let me
is
try
that,
that.
all I need is Is this okay? Yeah. My sense is that there's a great deal of candidacy here, truthfulness in these meetings, and I want to continue with that. And frankly, after listening to the previous presenters, I had said to myself that perhaps I should not speak. But thank you. But I've decided to. And how do we get this up on the screen? So please bear with me. I'll try to make this as interesting as I can. My name is, as you know, is Anthony Festaya, and my wife and I live in the Goodrich Plains. We came here via Westbrook, where I spent some time on the Police Advisory and Traffic Control Authority, the Council of Beaches, and Westbrook has 17 or 19 beaches, depending on the tide, and every position on the board of our home association. With that as background, I offer my thanks and appreciation for the effort which you, this board, have expended in this effort. I truly, truly do. It is important, though, that we recognize that as a society, we are experiencing a growth in the number of people entering into the 65 and above category. That's a fact and must be recognized, not only for Simsbury's benefit, but for the state and the nation. The McLean's, the need for residences and care facilities such as McLean's has offered. Senator McLean had insight and fully supported conservation, care for the environment. That's what the guy did. He cared for the environment. And I want to just deviate from what I've written here and say that in any meaningful project, there will be need to alter a plan. I have a fair amount of experience in projects, and that has always been the case. The idea that we have here is to minimize those number of excursions, and I think we could do that. I believe that the Senator McLean had insight and fully supported conservation, care for the environment, and for the aged and compromised. And that's a very, very some pregnant words in my ability. And yet we are experiencing our objections from neighbors over the use of these resources, our resources, Simsbury's resources, and state of Connecticut's resources, figuratively speaking, of course. I had some experience in a situation similar to our discussion this evening. And you see it up there. I was the chair of the mooring committee for the Shinnecock Yacht Club in Groton, and it became obvious that a reconfiguration of the mooring grid would offer an increase in safety in the event of strong winds acting on the now larger boats coming into the club. Appointed the larger boats, however, I think I have a point. May I borrow your pointer, please? Yeah, is that it? That point of land there is Jupiter Point. This is the Yukon Project Oceanology facility, and this is the campus right up here. This is Pine Island, a very, very favorite island of many people. And right here is the Shinnecock Yacht Club. Mooring fields for boats is right in this area here. And as the boats got larger and larger, the danger of a boat breaking loose, etc., filtered to the people living on Jupiter Point. Let me take it. The residents, the now larger boats in the club, in their well-appointed homes on Jupiter Point, as they felt that the larger boats would compromise their water view, even at a distance of 1,500 feet. That point there to there is 1,500 feet. And the mooring field held 60 boats, and the folks here thought that, well, that really doesn't fit our plan. Our view of the sunset, basically in that direction, would be compromised.
I've got you at time
And
there.
I
If you
couldn't
could
help
wrap up, please.
but
Thank you.
think of our situation here. Whereas, in fact,
I've got you at time at 5 minutes. If you could
Oh, wow.
summarize and wrap up.
I will
appreciate
wrap up.
Thank you.
And I appreciate it, sir. The issue at hand offers a parallel. McLean's is committed to supporting the environment. There may be something that comes up, but I feel certain that the management at McLean's will do everything possible to correct it. So I ask that McLean's request be approved. And I want to thank this board again for your time and energy that you've put into it.
Thank you. Next up, I have Wynn Wadhaus. It could be that, yes. Apartment 426? I apologize in advance if I get name struck. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lynn Wadhams, and my husband and I are Simsbury residents. We are Simsbury taxpayers, and we are Simsbury voters. We live at McLean, and we chose to do so for several reasons. Of course, as I am quite sure everyone in this room will acknowledge, McLean has a stellar reputation, has done for 50 years, continues to serve the community and to serve the community well. We are also, my husband grew up on a farm. The land is important to us. McLean has a proven track record of being stewards of the land and has been before wetlands before, including its most recent building projects. In 2010, 12 independent living homes, villas, were built on Holly Farm Lane. Wetlands were involved. McLean came to the Wetlands Commission. Plans were adjusted, plans were approved, the wetlands were preserved, and the houses remain as important places to live. More recently, in 2022, the Goodrich building was built. My husband and I lived there. There were wetlands considerations again, and there almost always are. Again, McLean respected the wetlands considerations, amended where necessary, and the Goodrich was built. There are 55 apartments. There are also public spaces and amenities that are open to the Simsbury public, many at no cost whatsoever. Simsbury has had the benefit and will continue to have the benefit of McLean knowing it to be an excellent citizen of the town, something of which Simsbury should be proud of. And I urge you to consider approving this application, which has been revised to meet all of your needs and allow it to go forward to the benefit of the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Ruth Kahn.
My name is Ruth Kahn. I live in the Goodrich in an independent apartment and have been living there for about 2.5 years. When we first came to our apartment, we happened to have a very beautiful view. We look over the golf course and the woods and over a lovely piece of wetlands. And one spring day, we were looking out and the golf course had started to do some repair work on their turf, whatever you call it. I'm not a golfer. Their putting greens or whatever. And they were digging up stuff and it was all brown for a while and then it turned green again. And one day we noticed that there was landscape people around the wetlands. And my husband, being curious, went downstairs to find out what were they doing there. And they were informing him that what they were doing was on the perimeter around the wetlands, not in the wetlands. They were planting bushes and some flora and some flowers even. And they were doing that, they told him, because they wanted to be sure no debris got in and no erosion occurred, and that none of the golfers would go in, that they felt this was a deterrent from having the golfers go in there. I myself have seen golfers peeing in the woods, but I have never seen a golfer step into the wetlands. I have seen bears watching the golfers, and I have never seen a bear walk into the wetlands because the wetlands have not only been nurtured and respected by McLean, but they have been enhanced. I think if you go around the property and you look at what is going on at the villas and at the Goodrich and in the property in general, as well as in the conservation and game property, you will see that the wetlands are in excellent condition. And in many cases, not only are being respected and well maintained, but even enhanced. I think that establishes a track record over many, many years. We're talking decades now. And I think that is cause to evoke faith and trust in the fact that these are people who are absolutely committed to not in turning the environment into a place that would be destructive to the vision of the governor and senator who established this land originally. So I think that's a track record that's important and it should be considered. And I think that the wetlands are really thriving where we live.
Thank you. Next, I have Connor Hogan or Hagan.
Good evening. My name is Connor Hogan, and I'm not a resident at McLean yet. But I am a Simsbury resident, and I am a wildlife manager. I am a forester and a field naturalist with 19 years of experience, and I'm the director of the McLean Game Refuge. And I'm here tonight to talk about a few things, but one thing that I think is important that we haven't discussed a lot is a little bit about the relationship between the McLean affiliates, the McLean Game Refuge, and the McLean trustees. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I would like to say a few things. First of all, the trustees of McLean have a pretty unique job. They manage the largest private wildlife sanctuary in southern New England, and they maintain a retirement community. And so their work requires a lot of balance, a lot of reflection, and a lot of interdisciplinary work. And that is orchestrated from the trustees through committees and ultimately through a president, Lisa, who manages these two organizations together. So I think it's important to know there's been a lot of discussion about the McLean Game Refuge, a lot of great things, mostly. I feel like I don't need to say an awful lot about it. But the considerations for McLean as a whole are always balanced between these two organizations. And just for the record about the McLean Game Refuge, yes, it's 4,400 acres. A little over 1,000 acres are in Simsbury. That's about 1.5 square miles. So it's good to have context when we're talking about size of land owned and managed by the McLean entity. So 20 acres, not to diminish the importance of this project, but it's also important to know that there are 1,000 acres managed for conservation by this organization in town. So the trustees manage both organizations, and a lot of the decisions made are about balancing healthcare and the environment. Traditionally, the trustees had viewed the Game Refuge as a place primarily for the environment and the McLean campus as a place for people and well-being. Over the past decade, the trustees have taken a very active stance in taking a much more integrated approach between those two organizations. So at the Game Refuge, for example, that's a lot louder. At the Game Refuge, we've been working to make handicap accessibility one of our priorities for well-being in nature. We've improved our trail signage, we've increased programming, and we see many more visitors. Similarly, on campus, the leaders of McLean have been looking at elevating that woodsy nature of the campus into a much more strategic, long-term vision of environmental stewardship. And it's taken a number of forms, and some folks have mentioned it with the wetlands behind the Goodrich, but that has also now involved long-term visioning around invasive plants, around infrastructure, on wildlife habitat, and most importantly, the integration of people in nature. We live in an integrated environment. The furthest place in the game refuge from development is less than a mile. And finding ways to live collaboratively is part of the McLean's long-term strategy on campus. You know, when I look at this project, I think of it as a pretty unique opportunity. McLean is looking to build this as part of their long-term strategy for sustainability, for environmental stewardship, for collaboration, and with the game refuge and with other environmental entities. But I think it's also offers a unique opportunity for the town of Simsbury. Development will happen. Development is happening. There's not a lot of places where development is done as thoughtfully or is being considered as thoughtfully as this project here at McLean. You know, low impact lighting, turtle bears. I mean, has anyone in the state of Connecticut ever considered turtles so much? You know, we're talking about wetland considerations. These are very minor wetlands we're talking about for the most part, and they've been given enormous consideration, sincerely, by the team at McLean, not flippantly, which may have happened elsewhere. And there's been a lot of collaboration. And I would hope that the commission would look at this and think about how the successes of this project could be replicated when they consider future opportunities, to think about what type of resources need to be brought in for external support, and also what kind of things could developers consider in terms of their impact on the environment. And you know, I urge you to move forward with this project. I think it merits the approval, but you know, I think there's a lot of experts that have given a lot of testimony. If there's anything related to the game refuge, I'm happy to answer questions, but thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, I have Jean Miles.
Hello, and thank you to the members of the committee for all that you're doing, sincerely.
Do you speak more into the mic?
Better? Hi, I'm Jean Miles. I'm a resident of Simsbury for 39 years. My address is 34 Redstone Drive in Weetog. I'm strongly in favor of McLean's plan to build these 40 homes, and I'll just take a couple of minutes to tell you why. I am a physical therapist. I worked at McLean for 31 years. That gives me some pretty good insight into how things are done at McLean. And even though I'm not a wetlands expert, I am an expert in people that are willing to make the changes needed to do what's best. That experience just of working there gave me a close look at how McLean plans projects really carefully and follows through responsibly. I witnessed firsthand the evolution of McLean going from just a nursing home to the amazing continuum of healthcare that it is now. And it has grown incrementally in a sensible way, meeting the needs of older persons. I can tell you from direct experience that McLean does not make decisions haphazardly, never quickly, and not without a lot of planning and forethought. You know what I mean. That includes being really careful about the land that they oversee. And over the years, I've seen McLean take a thoughtful approach to things like safety and environment and general operations. And I think I've seen the same thing here in all these meetings I've attended in how they've addressed the wetlands impact on the proposal. McLean isn't a business looking to make money for shareholders. It was founded on a charitable trust with a clear mission to care for people. And from being there for 31 years, that is what they do. The culture is geared to its excellence. 5-star excellence is what they strive for, always trying to be better. So it's very evident in the way that they've approached this and the adaptations and the revisions that they're doing that here. I'll just say a little bit more. Other people have said this. People are living longer. It's a mobile society. older people don't have their adult children living near them, but they do have a lot of relationships here. They want to stay here in a place that's safe for them to age in place. And the McLean Health Center is a continuum that will always be an excellent place for people to do that. And just in response to something that I heard, some people do want to live in an independent home and not in the apartment, and they don't need the assisted living yet. So that's why. It just seems straightforward to me that McLean owns the property. They've put forth a revised plan that responds to the commission's requirements, including steps to minimize the impact on the wetlands. And it's well known, as people have said, that Simsbury lacks this kind of housing. And already, McLean has done so much for the community. If you look at the Garmany Auditorium in the Goodrich, that is an amazing resource for the whole town. Benefits, it's a supplement to Eno. It's very handicapped accessible. And this is just yet another step that McLean is taking to meet the needs of older people and the community. So I'll just wrap up by saying that this is just another example of their goal to meet the future needs of aging people. And at the same time, the revised plan shows their clear effort to avoid the wetlands whenever possible, minimize disturbances, and take the conservation concern seriously. So I respectfully ask the commission to consider the wetland protections and the mitigation efforts that McLean is making and allow this project to move forward as soon as possible. And again, just thank you so much for all you've done. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, I have Dave Nagy. Dave Nagy.
I'm not sure if I can be as eloquent as people on both sides of the issue that I've heard. But I want to thank the committee for all their time spent. My name's Dave Nagy, lived in Simsbury for 77 years. Last 53 years on the Hop Brook. So I'm a neighbor and very much supporter of this project for McLean. I'll be very brief about this. Just recently, I heard Warren Buffett asked a question. The interviewer said, if there was only one thing that you could tell people after your 95 years of experience, what would it be? He said, to be kind. I believe that Senator McLean was kind in protecting the environment, in protecting the land, in setting up a trust that's in perpetuity to preserve this property for all of members of this community. I've been around for a while in this community. I picked rocks out of the golf course with my 5 brothers and sisters because Dad was one of the founding members of Hot Meadow. And Hot Meadow was, how are we going to take care of the water of the Hot Brook? Well, eventually I went up there with my fishing rod and we caught lots of fish in that holding pond that also watered all the fairways. So the trustees of the McLean Trust have really done a wonderful job creating the health care, feeding 4,000 people a year Meals on Wheels. You just go on and on. I'm in favor of this project because I have the confidence that McLean has done a good job and their trustees continue to do the best job they can for our whole community. And I want to thank you again for the time you spent. So let's try to just be kind like Senator McLean was kind to our community, and be kind to each other. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, I have Linda Schofield.
Linda Schofield, 3 Ryan Circle. First, let me add my thanks to all of you. I always really appreciate people on boards and commissions who volunteer. People often forget that you are volunteers, so thank you for serving your community. I am providing this testimony as a tax-paying resident of Simsbury, a former member of the Board of Finance, and a former state representative for Simsbury. Full disclosure, I am on the McLean board, but my remarks are my concerns and my words as a taxpayer and a former elected official, not speaking as a McLean person. Having run for office 5 times in Simsbury and knocked on every door in this town at least once, I got a really good feel for what was important to residents here. Listening to voters at their doors, I learned that their top priorities were consistently schools, taxes, and open space, not in any order until folks felt that they were out of balance. Specifically, people want a balance between costs and amenities. And I believe balance is a key concept that may be overlooked in these deliberations. I absolutely want to protect nature. I'm a person who hikes regularly here. I was the lead legislative sponsor for the Wild and Scenic River legislation that protects the Farmington River. And I raised the money and wrote the signs on the bike path, including one about the importance of wetlands. So I share your concerns for nature and wetlands, but I also believe we have to balance environmental protection with real human needs. At the last hearing, I heard the chair say, and actually repeated here tonight, to a few seniors who testified that the commission will only consider factors directly related to the wetlands, and the commission wouldn't take into consideration whether senior members of the community had options to live out their years in Simsbury. I understand that at a prior meeting, it was similarly stated that the commission wouldn't be swayed by the economic impacts of their decision on taxpayers or on businesses and organizations like McLean. My concern is that this narrow interpretation isn't in the best interests of the community and may not even reflect the commission's mission statement, as stated in State Law 22A-36 of the Connecticut State Statutes and mirrored word for word in the town charter. So I'm not an expert on wetlands law, but the plain reading of that language is in both the statutes and the charter. And believe me, I didn't coordinate with the other lady who brought this up, is to protect wetlands by, quote, minimizing their disturbance and by providing an orderly process to balance the need for the economic growth of the state and the use of its land with the need to protect its environment and ecology in order to forever guarantee the people of the state for the benefit of enjoyment and of generations yet unborn. I'm going to leave out a few words there. Let me emphasize 3 phrases in that. Talks about minimizing, not eliminating or completely prohibiting, minimizing the disturbance of wetlands. Talks about balancing the need for economic growth with the need to protect the environment. And it says it's for the benefit and enjoyment of people. To me, that language seeks to strike a balance for both people and nature. Senator McLean also understood this need for balance. He sought to, quote, protect wild plants and animals, conserve natural ecosystems, and provide opportunities for our community to provide peace of mind, to find peace of mind and body in nature. So he was concerned about both nature and people. And his legacy provided separate land and funding for both healthcare and the preservation of the game refuge. As a former Board of Finance member, I know all too well the challenges of balancing the taxpayers' desires for amenities like open space and their desire to keep taxes affordable for the average citizen of our town. Countless people have told me we need more economic development so that households bear less of a burden and businesses like McLean pick up more of the burden. This project is perfect development for this town. It would add taxable property without adding children to the school system, which drives the largest portion of the town's taxes and tax increases. It wouldn't add roads to the Department of Public Works to have to maintain, or recreational facilities for Parks and Rec to have to maintain. And there probably wouldn't be too many 80-year-olds who are criminals that the police would have to deal with. What this project would do is bring in about $500,000 annually that wouldn't have to come from other taxpayers in town. I respectfully ask the Commission to evaluate this application and all other applications through the balanced framework set out in state law and in the town charter. I believe McLean has taken the necessary steps to undertake this project in a responsible manner. McLean has an exemplary record as a steward of its land and is nationally recognized for just that long-standing record. I do want to make one last comment. The interveners accused McLean of organizing, speakers and letters and, having some sort of campaign. I just learned that the interveners themselves sent out a mailing with questionable statements, derogatory and false statements to people in the town. So they're organizing just as much as we did. And quite frankly, I'm kind of horrified at some of the things that they said in here that are not true. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, I have Robert Miles.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Robert Miles. I live at 34 Redstone Drive in Weetag, Connecticut. And I appreciate the opportunity to offer some perspective on the McLean Affiliates application before the Commission. Having lived in Simsbury for the past 39 years, I've had the opportunity to become quite familiar with some aspects of the McLean Trust. I have hiked extensively with family and friends throughout the McLean Game Refuge. My wife retired this past year after working at McLean Home for 31 years. And my 100-year-old mother is currently a beneficiary of the many services provided by McLean Home as she resides there. We all know that Senator McLean was a very generous man. I was going to talk a little bit about what his will said specifically with a couple of quotes. But when all is said and done, we all know that what he did was to set up basically a trust that had two very strong commitments. The will committed he was committed to conserving the refuge that was set up as part of the will, as well as ensuring that older and infirm residents can receive care through the McLean Home. Now, carrying out that mission requires thoughtful planning and responsible stewardship. There's a lot of planning that must go on in order to balance those two needs. The key question here is whether impacts to the applicable land can be avoided where possible, and where unavoidable, minimized and mitigated appropriately under the Commission's wetlands and conservation standards and those of the state. Now, Simsbury and the Farmington Valley are extremely fortunate to have had Senator McLean set aside very large parcels of property to use for his dual vision. At the time of his death in June 1932, he had already acquired 2,200 acres of property. The land for this proposed revised project represents a bit less than 1% of the land within the McLean Trust when he died. Today, almost a century later, it represents even less, a mere 0.5% of the more than 4,400 acres within the Trust stewardship. When writing his will, Senator McLean displayed great passion and heart for the environment as well as the old and infirm citizens of the community. The heart of this matter is that McLean Affiliates has made a comprehensive, well-supported effort to fulfill its dual mission of increasing needed service to these citizens, as well as continued conservation while abiding by the requirements of the Conservation Commission as well as the state. The Commission, through its diligent efforts, has raised important questions and concerns regarding various aspects of the project. In turn, McLean Affiliates has made very substantial and meaningful changes to the scale of the project and other adjustments to address every one of the Commission's concerns and comply with the required standards by the Commission as well as by the state. In conclusion, I believe the Commission has now a comprehensive record before it, including detailed expert analysis and a revised feasible and alternative plan that meaningfully responds to the concerns raised during this process. Importantly, these revisions reflect an effort to avoid wetlands where possible, minimize the disturbance where unavoidable, and include mitigation measures and long-term protections consistent with the Commission's standards. In my view, the revised application reflects that level of care that is necessary for an approval. I urge the Commission to do so. Based on the totality of the information presented, I respectfully urge you to approve the application moving forward as soon as possible. Doing so will allow McLean Affiliates to continue fulfilling the Senator's vision of serving older and infirm residents while also maintaining responsible stewardship and conservation of the surrounding land and water resources. Thank you for your service and thoughtful consideration of McLean Affiliates application.
Thank you. Next, I have Sharon Ann Byron.
Hi, I'm Sharon Byron. I remember when McLean was first envisioned back in the 1950s and 60s because I grew up here, across the street from McLean. I've noticed that I have not heard anything about them building sustainable net zero energy buildings over in that area at all as they impose upon it. So I want to thank all the members that have contributed to this, but I want to have you think about what net zero energy is about, how Westminster School in our town has employed net zero energy for all its buildings, and all those dorms are built with geothermal. I'm not hearing anything like that coming out of McLean. The vision in the 1960s was a model for the nation. And right now, we're going to build more buildings. We're thinking about the turtles. And I haven't heard anything about net zero energy. So I think you should go back to the drawing board.
Thank you. Next, I have Jordan Caton. Jordan Caton. That's the last name I have. Is there any other? Oh. Yep, not a problem. I was just going to ask if there was any other members that wanted to comment. Just please state your name and address for the record.
Absolutely. I'm Matt Sturdivant. I live at 14 Shady Lane. My property's it's both sides of Hot Brook, and I'm an abutter to the McLean property. There's a couple things, just one thing about flooding first. So, in the summer of 2023, record rainfall overwhelmed Hop Brook, resulting in flooding and erosion on the banks of Hop Brook. Simsbury also had flooding in October of that year. The flooding of small streams is an increasingly dangerous risk, and streams and small rivers, similar to Hop Brook, have experienced greater frequency and severity of storm flooding in recent years, according to the US EPA Climate Change Indicators River Flooding. Streams can become inundated and dangerous during flash flood circumstances, such as the Northeast during Hurricane Irene 2011, southwestern Connecticut in August of 2024, and western North Carolina during Hurricane Helene 2024. So the downstream implications for McLean's addition of 6.7 acres of impervious surfaces is concerning to me, and it should be concerning to anybody downstream and in town. So when, 17 to 20, whichever it is, acres is cut down and duplexes, rooftops, driveways, roads to get to those driveways are put in its place, this is only going to exacerbate the flooding risk, whether there's a clever retaining pond for mosquitoes to breed or not. There's a couple of additional considerations. There was a woman who brought up, is it dense or not? I'll just say that it's zoned for single family residences, 40,000 square foot. So anything more than that is dense by the town's own zoning. It should be noted here, we talked about economic development, and McLean sued the town of Simsbury, 2023, you know that. And it was about the assessed value, wanting to take it from 17.988 million down to 11 million, a decrease of 38.8%. That's what McLean wanted. So all of this talk about them being a good actor in town, go look at the lawsuit. It's in Superior Court. I'll provide a link. It's actually already on Simsbury Neighbors. You can go to the Facebook page. They settled less than a year ago, January 2025. The town and McLean affiliates settled on an assessed value of $15.05 million, a reduction of 16.3%. My property didn't go down by that much. I bet if I asked anybody in here who owns a house, their property didn't go down by that much. So I'm not sure that McLean is the good actor they set out to be.
Thank you. Any other folks from the public? Come on up and state your name and address, please.
Susan Messino, 41 Madison Lane. So I arrived here tonight after I assume you approved the minutes, and I had looked for them, and I didn't see them on the website. So I don't know how people were supposed to see that. And the reason why, well, I wanted to see the minutes from the previous meeting, and one reason why I wanted to see them is because the record of the previous public hearing for when this application was heard before, it's my understanding that the record for a public hearing should include the person's name, their expertise or affiliation, and the content of what they said. And none of that information was in the previous public hearing record from March 2025, or I guess. It just had a list of people. And that, I just found that very unacceptable. I think it's legally unacceptable. And also, people spent, I'm sure, a lot of time on their very, very detailed testimony about things that were very relevant to the conservation values of the property that haven't changed to this day. So I'm just asking as a citizen that we do better in terms of documenting things and providing information to the public. I looked on the calendar today and a few days ago to look for this meeting, and it was listed on the calendar, but it didn't say that it was a public hearing, either on the old version of the website or the beta version of the website. There were no documents listed on the calendar. So if you know how to play insider baseball, you could find your way maybe to the Conservation Commission website and find the documents there eventually on the old website, but not on the new website. And it also said on that, when I finally found that, it said, okay, if you want to find the previous information, go to the meeting from 12/16, which meant that you then had to play Nancy Drew to find that. So I'm just really asking that, you know, to have public trust and good governance and transparency, we need to know how to find the information. The reason why I'm even here tonight is because I happened to see on Simsbury TV the previous hearing, and I saw the experts that were testifying. I want to just say my PhD's in biology. I'm a professor of applied science. I've never seen this property. I've never been there. I don't live near there. But hearing the testimony of the experts, who I know them and their expertise, I thought, wow, this is a really, really special place. And the special things about that place haven't changed. And your primary responsibility is the water and the ecology. It isn't social, it isn't financial. We have other boards like planning and zoning that cover those other topics more comprehensively. But our natural systems are the basis for everything. You can't have a balance if you don't have a foundation of a functional ecology. So I just want to say that this is a super special place, and I would like to thank the people and experts that I think have really provided an incredible public education about how special this is. And if people hadn't stepped up, people that live near there and see it, etc., none of us would have known about that. So no matter what happens, I'm grateful to learn everything that we've learned in these meetings. I wanted to make another technical recommendation about the lighting. I think it said at the last meeting they were going to use 3,000 Kelvin, but it's pretty much standard now that you can get 2,700, and the lower the better if you're talking about wildlife sensitive lighting. So I just want to, anyway, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Do one last call for anyone else from the public to speak. If not, the applicant had requested to the right to respond to anything that came up, so welcome them back.
Thank you. Could I just ask before I start, Mr. Chair, for you to confirm that I'm the last speaker in the hearing and the hearing will close after me? The applicant has the right to speak last and respond to everything that's been said.
Do any of the commissioners want to discuss whether or not we intend to close the hearing?
So we've had this issue before where we need some time to talk before we close the public hearing, because once we close the public hearing, no more information can come in. So I think that maybe it's a little premature since you're going to be the last speaker before we do that. Maybe we should take a little bit of a break and then have some time to have a discussion. Is that the right order?
It's fine with me.
Yes, you mean a break, sitting here, just deliberating among. Okay, yes.
Well,
yes.
but maybe just like a 5-minute
Oh,
break.
sure. Sure, if the chair and the commission agrees. Yes.
If you would like to motion, we take a 5-minute recess.
I would like to move that we take a 5-minute recess.
Second.
All in favor? Any discussion? Aye. All right, we will resume at All right. I'll call the meeting back to order. So we do want to give the applicant a chance to respond. And then if the commissioners have any further questions to either the applicant, BNL, or the interveners, and of course, the applicant can have the last word of the evening. One question to the applicant before we move forward. If we decide we need more information when we deliberate closing the public hearing, would the applicant be willing to extend as we are against the deadline?
We're open to it, Mr. Chair. I'd like to have the discussion and see what it is you think we need and whether it's something that we can answer tonight. So why don't we take it as it comes, but we certainly are open to it.
Okay, thank you. And you're welcome to respond to any of the stuff that came up. Yes.
You want to ask us the things you want to ask us so we make sure that's all done, especially if you're going to ask questions of interveners, because as I said, I would like to be responding, giving the final response.
We can do commissioner questions if you'd prefer.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I know I'm good. If does anyone else have further questions? No, we need to get the questions answered before we close public hearing. If we close the public hearing tonight, that's the end of asking questions. If you've got them. Yep.
So what I've heard tonight relative to the wetlands is a concern about the water quality going into Hop Brook. We have different opinions on that, right? There was a statement of that, and the main one was that the riparian border being so large and that there's no net change in the water discharge is equivalent to the water quality going into the Hop Brook being the same as it is now. And so that seemed to be the one technical point that there was some debate on. And so I was just wondering if I caught that right. Do you think that that's a correct statement? And then how would we resolve that? Is there a piece of information that I'm missing or that you can reference in the extensive collection of paperwork on this that I should be looking at? And I'll leave that open to the interveners and to the applicant.
As the intervener stated earlier in the meeting, we do not have had an opportunity to review the submission or the responses. We only received them yesterday and Friday over a holiday weekend, and we would like to have more time.
Okay, so I'll go back then to the applicant because there's a lot of technical information involved.
For the record, Tom Daly with SLR Consulting. So a couple things. I'd ask you to look at Appendix F, which is in the submission package. This commission, that you raised a concern about water quality. At that time, at the previous application, and as the stormwater manual states in the state of Connecticut, that if you meet the water quality standard, which is essentially the first flush, if we think about on a hot summer day, that first 1.5 inches that hits the pavement picks up all the sediment and takes it on its way. As the storm event proceeds, the water gets cleaner and cleaner. So the state of Connecticut has determined that if you treat the 1.3 inches, a few years ago it was a 1 inch, and they increased it in 2024 manual to be 1.3 inches. If you focus on treating that 1%, that 1.3 inches of rainfall, you've handled 99% of the pollutant load. So what the DEP says on that is they want you to treat it. And how do we do that? So we start with, basically, we have a treatment train. We start with deep sump catch basins. Your standard catch basins that you're going to see on most of your projects are 2 foot. We have 4 foot on this site. Catch basins have hoods, which makes every catch basin almost act as a sediment trap. It then goes to a hydrodynamic separator, which is designed for an 80% TSS removal. Then it goes to a stormwater basin which promotes infiltration. So that 1.3 inches is not even allowed to get off the site. It's designed to infiltrate into the soil. So if you meet all those standards, we have met the DEP water quality standard. Now, that's being said, we went beyond that this time. We actually, if you look at Appendix F, we actually did the calculations to support and back up our design. And essentially, we basically validated the stormwater manual, where the manual says you don't have to do the calcs, you do 1.3, we're good. We went all the way back, we did all the calculations, and we showed that each basin, if you look at published testimony and published data, including from the University of New Hampshire, they tell you, based upon each stormwater feature, what the removal efficiencies of those elements are. And by doing all those calculations, the way the basins have been designed, we have met all those water quality standards. So from a stormwater perspective, Appendix F will walk you through those drainage calculations. But also, I would say, to make it a little easier, there's an executive summary in the front page of or the front 2 pages of the stormwater manual, and or a stormwater report. Take a look at that. That'll then walk you through that. But that information was submitted with the original application. There's been no modifications to those calculations. And also, I would say there's no outstanding comments from your peer review or your town engineer as to the water quantity or the water quality calculations that we presented to this commission.
Thank you. So one other question that I heard also was due to very heavy flooding on the river from, large rain events. I think that your calculations are all for a 100-year storm. Is that true? Is that what?
That is the standard. So it's flooding, but it's in the floodplain.
Right.
So take a look at your town flood maps. Everything that floods is in the floodplain. We're not impacting the floodplain. But a couple things. So we're actually showing a slight decrease in the amount of water coming off our site. And how are we doing that? Is because we're promoting infiltration. We're recharging it into the groundwater, and we let it get back in and promote infiltration. I believe that was also a concern of the commission. You want to get it back in the ground and not send it on its way down the river. We redesigned these basins, especially the bioinfiltration basin. That water is going to get back into the ground and get polished. But the basins that are the 2 big basins down below are primarily infiltration basins. So what the result is, if you look in our calculations, there's a tab that says the pre and post for the 2 through the 100-year storm. We're showing a slight decrease in those flows. So, and also beyond that is the standard that this commission, 99% of your applications, you only look at the peak runoff. What does that mean? At the highest point, how much is going off the site? We actually looked at the volume of runoff also. So that total volume of water coming off the site, that's a standard that is not typical for an application to look at, just like the water quality calculations are not something this commission has asked for in the past on a typical application. So the volume is not a standard, but we knew because of the concerns about the offsite flooding in the Hot Brook, we took it to the other step and made sure that we didn't have an increase in volume of runoff. You can always cut the peak off, but what happens is you stretch out the peak. And so if you look at most of your applications, there's no more peak, but it's going over a longer period, so the volume goes up. We mitigated that by infiltrating these basins, and frankly, the basins are oversized to allow that water to infiltrate. In addition to that, the water quality is, Matt will speak a little bit about the buffer, the riparian buffer.
For the record, it's Matt Sanford, professional wetland scientist, registered soil science with SLR. So Tom, Mr. Daly just gave a very in-depth description of the treatment train that is proposed on this particular project to manage the stormwater and to protect the water quality within Hot Brook and the adjacent wetlands on the site. From a professional wetland scientist perspective, and you've actually had 2 professional wetland scientists review this project, myself, and you've had Ms. Duffy from B&L look at the stormwater quality requirements, analyze those stormwater quality requirements, and tonight, as provided as our testimony this evening, we've demonstrated that the site meets the water quality standards to protect Hot Brook, its riparian wetlands, the riparian uplands adjacent to it, as well as the wetland 8, wetland 5, and wetland 7. I think one of the key components that Mr. Daly pointed out is that these basins are infiltration basins. They're not meant to have surface discharges unless you have a significant rain event. We're trying to get the water back into the underlying soils. What does that do? That allows, during the summer months, if you have a rain event in the summer months and it comes off the hot impervious surfaces or comes off of roofs, it allows that water to infiltrate into the soil and cool down. It's important, right? Cool down to ambient temperatures. Then that water moves through the soil and starts to move towards Hop Brook. But what happens as that groundwater moves towards Hop Brook? Well, it gets intercepted by all that riparian vegetation that is maintained. In some areas, over 235 feet of riparian vegetation. On detention basin 430. On detention basin 440, it's over 300 feet before that water actually ever gets to Hop Brook. So with the infiltration basins and the large riparian zone that's being protected along Hop Brook, that protects the water quality of Hop Brook and the organisms that live within Hop Brook.
Thank you.
Do the commissioners have any other questions? Going once, going twice. Hearing none, I'll invite the applicant back up.
Thank you. And thank you, I want to repeat what a lot of people said. Thank you, commissioners, for your time and attention. Thank you for the professionalism and courtesy of your town staff. Just a reminder on a couple points of law. Your decision, of course, must be based on the law governing inland wetlands applications and on the facts in the record. And as an inland wetlands commission, the law commands that you act based on fact, on scientific expert evidence, and on what is probable or likely to occur. The law also commands that you do not base your decision on emotion or people's preferences, speculation, or possibility. Rather, Connecticut courts have held that impacts to wetlands is a technically complex question that requires scientific expert testimony to support a conclusion. As I said at the start of this hearing, this application stands on its own merits and it provides all the technical information to demonstrate that it satisfies your regulatory requirements, avoids any adverse impact to wetlands or watercourses, and should be approved. The context and the backdrop to the application are also important. When you denied our previous application last year, this commission provided specific direction to us on what you wanted to see from us to be able to approve an application. We focused on that direction. Our team worked hard on it, and we believe we have satisfied all of those items and addressed your prior concerns. Most importantly, this application proposes no direct impacts to wetlands or watercourses. 0. We not only reduced the number of units by about a quarter, but we also reduced the wetlands crossings to only one crossing now. We were able to do that because McLean agreed to reduce the number of units and move many of the units away from the wetland to the west and east sides of the site. Our expert engineers and wetland scientists have shown you and testified that the single crossing is designed as a bridge that avoids any direct impact on Wetland 8. You have no contrary expert evidence in the record before you on that point. In fact, the town engineer and your independent peer review firm have told you that all their comments have been addressed, except for a few minor details that Ms. Duffy talked about tonight regarding soil media and the types of plants, which she was telling you could be made conditions of approval and did not need to delay your consideration and action on this application. And so you have received no contrary opinions from your experts either about there being any wetland harm. We also avoided any indirect impacts to the wetlands or to Hop Brook by ensuring that at least the same amount of stormwater continues to reach Wetland 8 and the other wetlands on the property with a slight increase, and by a slight decrease in flow to Hop Brook, as we just spoke about a moment ago. We also avoided indirect impacts by providing a more than adequate riparian buffer to Hop Brook, avoiding impacts to groundwater flow, mitigating soil compaction, breaking up the site work into additional phases, confirming that the stormwater management system meets the latest state standards for pollutant removal, controlling fertilizer application with a new integrated pest management plan, and providing additional LID methods to ensure that rainwater will continue to infiltrate and recharge the groundwater and wetlands. These are all things you asked us to do in your May decision. Among other things, we also provided you a detailed wetlands impact assessment report and a comprehensive biological assessment report for the entire McLean property, as you asked. And of course, Dennis Quinn has given you a thorough and extensive study of eastern box turtles on the property and their habitat, and he has recommended design modifications to the plan and specific mitigation plans to protect the turtles and to enhance their habitat. Our design team also presented a comprehensive landscape strategy designed to beautify the development and integrate the landscaping with the environmental performance of the site. So, based on the record before you, we submit that you can and should find that our application satisfies the standards of your regulations and demonstrates that the proposed regulated activities are not likely to have a substantial adverse impact on wetlands or watercourses, and that there are no alternatives to those activities that are feasible and prudent and will have less environmental impact to wetlands. And there is no basis in the record that would allow you to find otherwise. Just a moment more about feasible and prudent alternatives. We're asking you to approve our application, of course, and when you hopefully do that, we need you to find that a feasible and prudent alternative does not exist. What does that mean here? Well, under the Connecticut Inland Wetlands Act, this is section 22A 41, an inland wetlands agency shall take into consideration the environmental impact of the proposed regulated activity on wetlands and the applicant's purpose for and any feasible and prudent alternatives to the proposed regulated activity, which alternatives would cause less or no environmental impact to wetlands or watercourses. And your inland wetlands regulations, of course, contain similar standards in sections 10.2b and 10.3. The statute, and as interpreted by our state Supreme Court, provides that an alternative is feasible and prudent only if it is sound from an engineering standpoint and is also economically reasonable in light of the social benefits derived from the activity. And the statute provides that cost may be considered in deciding what is prudent. That's section 22A 38. Connecticut courts have also held that whether there are feasible and prudent alternatives that would cause less environmental impact to wetlands depends on whether the proposal would have a significant adverse impact to the wetlands in the first place. In other words, if a development would cause no impact to wetlands, then there is no alternative with less impact. Our state Supreme Court held that in the Riverbend Associates case in 2004. And the Supreme Court also held that an inland wetlands agency may consider alternatives until the balance between economic development and wetlands and watercourses protection has been achieved. With this application, we submit to you that that balance has been achieved. We have shown you that there are no feasible and prudent alternatives to the proposed regulated activities that would have less environmental impact on wetlands or watercourses. Propose one wetlands crossing, and it is the only feasible and prudent alternative for access to the southern part of McLean's property. The uncontroverted expert evidence in the record is that this crossing will create no direct impact to wetlands and no harm to wetlands. As such, there is no alternative for accessing that area with less environmental impact on wetlands. The activities that we propose in the upland review area have also been carefully designed to avoid any indirect adverse impact to wetlands or watercourses through all the methods that I listed a moment ago. You have the professional opinion of professional wetland scientist Matt Sanford that there will be no adverse impacts to wetlands or watercourses from this proposal, and you have no equivalent expert, including your peer review firm, that has given a contrary opinion. We've given you a detailed description of several alternative designs in our original packet, which show that the current plan is the most feasible and prudent alternative with the least environmental impact to wetlands and watercourses. Among the alternatives that we considered is the 52-unit plan that was the subject of our prior application. So the standard has been met, and we respectfully submit that based on the evidence in the record, you should find that a feasible and prudent alternative does not exist. And last, I'll address the intervention petition. As noted in the last meeting, by me. It is the intervener's burden under the state statute, section 22A19, to prove their allegations. They must provide technical evidence to support those allegations. What independent technical evidence of their own did the interveners submit to prove their allegations? None. And that's true again tonight. You heard the opinion of interveners having no expert credentials, and no experts contravened the McLean team or Barton and LaJudas or the town engineer. The interveners merely relied on argument, their personal opinions, and the first B&L memo from December. We have addressed those comments by B&L, which B&L confirmed in their second memo, except for the comments in the second one where they wanted a few additional details about the turtle barrier and a few other things, which, as they told you, we have provided, and we provided them the next day. Now the interveners then are left with no evidence to support their allegations, having relied upon a memo by the peer review firm, which has been addressed. Again, wetlands impact is a scientifically complex question requiring expert testimony. The interveners provided none, and they have not controverted our experts' opinions with competent evidence. As a result, their petition must be rejected. In conclusion, we've shown you that there is no likelihood that this plan, as revised, will adversely impact wetlands or watercourses. There is no evidence in the record to support a contrary finding. We respectfully request your approval. Thank you.
So do we have any concerns with keeping the public hearing open, or do we want to? I assume we want to have some discussion on that.
So one of the issues is that we also have to make a recommendation as a conservation commission after the wetlands part. So if there's any information that we need for that part of the discussion, that has to be part of the public hearing, I believe.
Well, I want to hear from town staff too, but my understanding is that if and when we file a zoning application, that's referred to you to comment as a conservation commission. Don't have any application before you right now. That's a conservation application where that's referred to you as such. I mean, we don't have an objection to it. What you have before you is an inland wetlands application. It's controlled by all these things that we've talked about, and the legal standards on such an application has timing and hearing rules and all of that. So I don't believe that it's appropriate to keep the public hearing open for conservation commission purposes.
We did have the applicant as the last word while we deliberate. Does anyone have any comments?
I don't think I would feel comfortable closing the public hearing tonight. I know we have a time issue of 35 days, which expires tomorrow, but some of the material we got literally came in today. It wasn't a lot, but there was still a few things in the last few days.
We also have not had a chance to talk as a commission. We've had a chance to ask our individual questions back, but it was at the last time that we started to hone in on what were missing areas or things that were a concern to us, which I also think could be cleared up.
We can still debate after we close the hearing. We just can't receive more.
Which is one of the root problems we've had in the past. Especially with complex ones, to date, all of our questions have been individuals back on the testimonies we've heard. We haven't had a chance to discuss the commission. Now, I'm perfectly willing to stay here now and try to talk to it, but we know that there's time. We need some time to go back and look at the pieces that we've seen, and so I feel like we're missing that one step in the process, but that's just my opinion.
I'm agreeing with you. I think we need to come up with our final questions and give these guys some time to respond to the most recent updates.
My only concern with continuing it is, are we going to actually get new expert information? We've had two sets of experts review this plan, both town staff and BNL. BNL recommends not delaying this any further. They were satisfied. They have no grades. They were hired to review this. We hired them for their expertise, and they have, and they don't have any outstanding concerns other than very minor additions to the plans. I don't know that we're going to, I mean, we could go back and forth for many meetings on this, on if we're going to get if we're going to get more information, more questions, this and that. I don't know that we're going to get more relevant information by keeping the public hearing open. You're going to have to address properly.
We did ask Mr. Trinkus to review the application. He hasn't been able to. He got the stomach virus over the weekend and wasn't able to look at the materials in time for today's meeting.
Mr. Chairman, that's a very good reason not to keep the public hearing open, because what an intervention petition does is it gives you a right to go to a hearing and present your evidence about an application. That's it. We've had 2 hearings. You've had all the opportunity in the world, more than you're entitled to present the evidence that they're obligated to present to prove their allegations. And they haven't come up with it. You can't come up here and say, I just hired somebody, let me keep it open for that reason. The law doesn't allow, Mr. Chairman, any endless, and I have litigated over this issue, so I can tell you with confidence, our cases have held. The law doesn't provide an intervener with an endless round robin opportunity to keep responding to things. You get to put on your evidence, show what you think are the concerns, try to prove that there's some environmental impact, and then the applicant gets to respond to it. Doesn't have to be round after round after round. Of course, we already have had a couple rounds, but it's enough. And so, no, I can't agree to keep the hearing open for that reason. And I thought the commission was going to tell us tonight, and that's what I thought you were doing, if you had questions or things that, you didn't think that we had addressed. But it's hard for me to see what that could be. I mean, I agree with you. There's not going to be new information at this point. We've answered the engineering comments. We've addressed the concerns, and we're kind of talking about the same issues repeatedly. So it's hard for me to see what the good reason is to extend the hearing and keep it going, other than for the people who would like to just keep it going endlessly and hope that it drags it out enough that the development will go away, which obviously we're not agreeing to.
Let me just say it one more time. I think it's clear to everybody, but because we're at the public hearing deadline, you cannot extend the public hearing without the applicant giving you an extension.
There's a few different pieces running through here, so I want to respond to the chair's comment early on. I'm not sure that we're going to be requesting specific new information, but when we've been in this situation before, there was often a lot of clarifying pieces that when we talked as a group, we could go back and get clarifying comments and a very comment thing, which allowed the group to get to a more general consensus.
My understanding, we can still get clarifying information from town staff. We just can't go back to the applicant, the intervener, or the third-party reviewer with more questions.
Correct.
We can get it from town staff. I think in the past we could not.
But it can't be new information. It has to be information that is on the record.
Right. If I may, your staff is your advisor, so you can have a closed hearing, you can be deliberating, and you can ask your staff, was there information about X and such in the record? Can you point me to that? And can you go over what it was that the information contains without providing, material new information? And then, your town engineer can say, right, let's look in the stormwater report in the executive summary. It does provide that number on page 2. That's completely fine.
I stand by, I don't know that we're going to get new expert information to evaluate by asking to keep public hearing open. Anyone else have thoughts, comments?
I never speak at these things. So if we close the hearing, are we obligated to make a motion this evening in regards to?
No, we're not obligated to vote this evening.
All right, so in theory, we can close it. We can all pour through the new things. We can get clarification about the existing material that we have in front of us so that we can make a fully informed decision.
Correct, and we can debate it amongst ourselves at the next meeting if we need clarification from the information we have.
Right.
We can clarify that, sort that out. It's just we can't receive new information.
I'm inclined, Mr. Acting Chair, I feel like we've got the information. I'm not sure what new wave of information is going to come.
Do we want to discuss amongst ourselves before we close?
I mean, at the end of the day, we also do need the applicant's permission if we want to consider extending public hearing. And
What I'm saying is, if we discuss now, maybe we could get those clarifying questions complete now, so we don't have to worry about it later.
I'm happy to have the discussion, and if you have clarifying questions, I believe now is the time. Does anybody have any further questions?
I guess where I was headed is, what do we think that the key criteria is for us to say that we can answer to everyone that we have exhausted all of the suitable alternatives? And I think that's one of the things we're going to answer, right? We're going to say we have done that because of X, Y, and Z. We had a little bit of a discussion about the water quality, which is one thing that came up today. Yep. And from my perspective, I'm willing to take that as the final answer. That's what makes sense to me on the discussion. I didn't know if anybody else had any particular issues. A lot of what we heard that is more sort of general falls under the conservation side. And we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about the wetlands piece. The thing that I wanted to go back and look at in more detail was, again, the water. I want to just understand in a little more depth how the water system is working to inject it back into the ground. I know that was one of our big concerns in the last one. They've said they said that they have dealt with that, and I believe them, but I couldn't quote where that was on the system, and I want to go back and read that.
Are you talking about with in the wetlands with the street going through? Is there going to be enough saturation into the wetlands?
It wasn't so much though. It was mostly the impervious surface areas. We still have a large amount of impervious surface. There was a discussion about rain gardens and piping originally, but now I think a lot of that's been put into local discharge back to the ground. There was so I wanted to be clear on that. Now, if everybody else is very clear on that, and can explain it to me, I'd be fine with that.
I would say if you have more questions on that, let's ask.
Well, I think what I need to do is I need to read it. I needed to read it. That was one of my areas I was worried about. I've heard a lot today, which but what I really want to do for the discussion is get through the list of things as we go through to say, yes, we've evaluated all these things. This is how we got to the decision. I don't particularly like getting rushed. It's happened to us in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Just because we've been listening to a lot of things, but we haven't had.
So I think that information does exist in what we have. We have the applicant's submission on that. We have the town staff's review of it, and we have E&L's review of it. So I don't know that we're going to get new information added to that.
And I would think that that's a true statement. But I'm sort of asking the rest of the commission, are there other things that they are thinking about? Go to that check. I just listed a couple from my perspective.
For me, it's making sure there's enough water getting to the wetlands. That's my main concern, making sure that I think they've addressed, with the turtles. I think their plans satisfied me there. In regards to the forest being cut down, I'm still iffy, but there's nothing new that's going to come of that.
One piece that I wanted to just talk a little bit about, I know it's in there, is the phase planning of the construction. And I was, now that I've heard everything, I was going to go back and read that piece. But I think that is all satisfied. Also, it goes back.
Yeah, it's in there, and we debate that
Right.
and have town staff dig into stuff for us. Yeah, I don't think. Right, so we can't call B&L back and say, "Can you look at this again for us?"
Right. So that's why this conversation is really important, because this is what we're going to be considering when it comes to the end. We're going to vote on a proposal, on the actual proposal. All the that are going to go with it are going to be listed. What we did last time, consider it or what has to be addressed. So we have to make sure that those topics, that we are confident. Nothing in those topics already. You're right. Are you all set?
Material is here. I just have to highlight.
Yep.
Well,
I have a lot of reading to do.
we
still.
have.
Jason.
They've answered all my questions that I've had.
I think the material is here.
Okay. Hearing that, entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Here we go. It's the bottom one, right? Okay. All right. Move that the Inland Wetlands and Watercourse Agency closes the public hearing on application CC number 25-25 of McLean Affiliates, Inc., 75 Great Pond Road for deliberation on February 3rd, 2026 at the Town of Simsbury Public Library, 7 p.m.
Hearing a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Moving on, Conservation Commission business. We can discuss the conservation business relevant to this application at the next meeting if there's no objections. Designated agent actions and other reports? None. And I'll entertain a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
For over 40 years, SCM has been the voice of our town,
bringing us together through local programming,
education, and live broadcasts.
SEM isn't just about television.
It's about empowering our community,
ensuring our voices are heard during government meetings, and celebrating milestones
like our high school graduations.
But today, SEM faces a challenge.
Our funding structure is based on television subscriptions.
And it's no secret, people have been cutting the cord.
With a shift to internet-only subscriptions,
SEM receives less revenue,
even though all our programming is freely available online.
We need your support.
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 Your donation can make a difference.
It will ensure that SCM remains open,
continues to educate our youth,
and keeps our community informed.
Thanks to SCM, I've been honing my creative skills,
helping me work towards my college degree.
SCM is crucial for keeping our community connected.
SCM isn't just here to broadcast local events. They're actually preserving Simsbury's history.
Join us in preserving Simsbury's voice.
Simsbury's voice.
Together we can ensure that SCM continues to thrive
for generations to come.
Visit our website
Or scan the QR code on your screen to make your donation.
Every contribution
counts.
Thank you for supporting Simsbury Community Media,
where your town,
Your schools,
and your government come together.